Chapter 214. This person was seizing the essence of the plants for his own use. It was a blatant act of theft. He stole the essence that did not belong to him and did not give anything in return. Once the essence of the ancient tree was completely stolen, it was equivalent to the end of its life. Now, the ancient tree was full of vitality, but it was only a fleeting moment. Swoosh! The strange person who looked like a dead tree suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were also extremely strange. There seemed to be a white gas in his left eye, and a black gas flashed in his right eye. The white gas seemed to be thriving and full of vitality. His right eye, on the other hand, was grayish-white and deathly still, as if it contained an endless amount of death. These two completely different feelings appeared in his eyes at the same time. It could be said to be the strangest thing. If it was seen by others, they would probably shudder on the spot and have their hairs stand on end. It also seemed to represent the charm of withering and thriving in the plants, and the alternating charm of time. Damned know-it-all, you old fart. I've only killed a few of your descendants. You have so many descendants, but you just won't let me go and chased me for 1,000 years. If it wasn't for the fact that I've cultivated one of the most marvelous incantations in the world, the 9 changes of life and death, I would have been able to escape by faking my death. Mph, you old fart, you really got away with it. Mph, if it wasn't for the fact that I've only cultivated the 9 changes of life and death to the 6th change, you wouldn't have had the chance to be so fierce. When I recover, I'll settle the score with you sooner or later. The different divine lights in his eyes quickly disappeared, but he kept muttering and cursing someone. Judging from his tone, it could be said that he was furious. This old fart is really ruthless. To think that I, perfected Lord Ku Rong, have dominated the world, and I'm considered ruthless when it comes to killing people. I've killed countless living beings, but I'm still a little inferior to you. No wonder I could survive since ancient times. My cultivation base is only left with this insignificant bit. True Lord Ku Rong looked like he was gnashing his teeth, but it made his appearance that resembled a dead tree look even more terrifying and appalling. If they were in the secular world, his appearance alone was enough to scare countless people to death. However, the heavens have not forsaken me, allowing me to encounter this strange flower here. As long as I find an opportunity and devour her at the moment when she fuses with her body during the tribulation, not only will there be hope for me to recover my cultivation, I might even be able to break through my original shackles and reach an unprecedented level. Soon, so many years had passed, and the tribulation would be in the next 1 or 2 years. Faster, faster. I can't wait any longer. If it wasn't for the fact that I couldn't find your true body, I wouldn't have been trapped here for hundreds of years. Perfected Lord Ku Rong licked his lips and looked unusually ferocious. His gaze seemed to be able to penetrate the tree and look directly into the house. With just a glance, his eyes slowly began to close again. In the blink of an eye, his aura was restrained again, as if there was no trace of life. However, his body was still slowly and persistently absorbing the life essence of the ancient tree. No one would have been able to discover that there was actually such a strange person in such an ancient tree. It made one's hair stand on end, and the chill was bone-piercing. Zhu'er, where is the 100 Flowers Valley? Is it in the center of the southern wilderness? In the dense forest of the southern barbarian region, there were tall, ancient trees and mountain ranges. A small vermilion bird flapped its wings and flew around a black-robed man. The man looked at the vermilion bird and faintly smiled before asking, "What is it?" It was Di Shetien, who had returned to the Myriad Demon Valley and rested for a day before following the vermilion bird to the 100 Flowers Valley. Glancing around and following the vermilion bird, he found that the route seemed to lead to the center of the southern wilderness. Di Shetien knew that there was a mysterious woman in the southern wilderness and that the woman lived in a place called the 100 Flowers Valley. However, he did not know the specific location. After all, the southern wilderness was too big. There were not only the demon clan, but also some birds and beasts. There were also many dangers, such as some ancient strange beasts that could not develop intelligence and some unique dangerous places, like the ancient tombs in the Myriad Demon Valley. Wait, if he rushed in rashly, he would not even know how he died. For a long time, Di Shetien had not really traveled in the southern wilderness, so it was naturally difficult for him to know the specific location of the 100 Flowers Valley. Yes, that's right. Zhua heard from elder sister that the 100 Flower Valley is located in the center of the southern wilderness. It's the place where the 100 veins converge. It's a rare treasure land. The spiritual energy inside is many times denser than in other places. It has also formed a spiritual spring, which is the best place in the southern wilderness. Brother Di, you will understand when you get there. It is not inferior to your myriad demon valley at all. It's just a little small. The vermilion bird chattered incessantly. She had never come into contact with an outsider, and she herself was not scheming. When she spoke, it was as if she was spilling beans. She blurted out everything she knew, and there was even a faint flaunting expression on her face. Really? Then I'd like to take a good look. Di Shitian smiled indifferently, turned his eyes, and said, the 100 Flowers Valley. Could it be that hundreds of flowers bloom in the valley all year round? There are more than 100 kinds of flowers in the valley. I heard from my sister that the 100 Flowers Valley is actually a flower mound with many kinds of flowers. These flowers bloom at the right time. There are different kinds of flowers blooming all year round. My sister likes peonies the most, and there are many peonies in the valley. Also, there are many butterflies flying around the valley every day. They are very beautiful. Sister Di and I are very familiar with each other. When we get there, I will introduce you to her. Flower mound? What does a flower mound mean? Di Shitian turned his attention to the two most sensitive words, flower mound. Vaguely, he seemed to have grasped something. He immediately blurted out the question. Flower mound. Zhua doesn't quite understand. Zhu Neo shook her head and landed on Di Shitian's shoulder. She tilted her head and thought carefully. Then, she said, I seem to remember that my sister once told me about it. The flower mound used to be the grave of thousands of rare flowers in the purple gold continent after they were annihilated. When they were annihilated, they seemed to have left behind some flowers. Zhu is not too sure about the rest. Brother Di, let's hurry up. My sister must be waiting anxiously in the valley. When Di Shitian heard this, he naturally quickened his pace. There was an inexplicable breeze blowing around him. His steps were light and his speed increased. Not long after, he thought about it and rode the demon wind forward again. His expression did not change, but thousands of ideas emerged in his mind, flashing constantly. He thought about the information that Zhua had accidentally revealed. He began to think. Although there was not much information, he could still figure out some things. First, it was very clear that the 100 Flowers Valley was definitely a special place in the southern barbarian lands. Its location and uniqueness made it special. He had heard of the flower mound before. It meant a tomb for all sorts of treasured swords. The mound was a graveyard. The origin of the flower mound was most likely an inestimable secret. Why were there so many rare flowers buried in the 100 Flower Valley? Or rather, what exactly happened there back then? Second, he had a vague guess about the identity of the sister that Zhua mentioned. Could it be that her sister was some kind of rare flower in the 100 Flower Valley that gave birth to spiritual intelligence and transformed into a plant spirit of the demon clan? This guess was not baseless. The 100 Flower Valley had the most flowers in the valley, and the thing that it did not lack the least was flowers. According to the location of the valley, it was most likely that the flowers had given birth to spiritual intelligence and condensed into a pill and transformed into a human form. Among the demon clan, birds and beasts were demons as long as they gave birth to spiritual intelligence. It was the same for flowers, plants, and trees. As long as they were living beings, they would become demons as long as they gave birth to spiritual intelligence. Among the demons, flowers, plants, and trees were the most special. Once they gave birth to spiritual intelligence, they would often have even more magical abilities. For example, plants of the same species could communicate with each other. Wait, there were many other mystical aspects. The opportunity for plants to transform into demons was very rare. However, once they did, they would be experts among the demon clan. At the same time, their rarity also represented their preciousness. Along the way, he pondered while chatting with the vermilion bird. Riding the demon wind, he was not slow. With the vermilion bird's guidance, he bypassed many dangerous areas along the way and took the fastest route. It did not take long. They finally arrived at their destination. Brother Di, look, we're here. The 100-Flower Valley is in front. Sister, I'm back. The vermilion bird's eyes lit up when she saw the front. She cried out clearly, flapped her wings, and pounced in happily. This is the 100-Flower Valley. It's indeed beautiful. Di Shetien stopped in front of the valley and swept his gaze forward. Around the valley, peach blossoms bloomed and apricot trees fell in all directions. Around the valley, hills rose and surrounded it. Looking at the trees on the hills, the distribution seemed to be very messy. However, there seemed to be a pattern that was difficult to describe. It could connect with the surrounding heaven and earth. In addition, there were all kinds of falling petals. It seemed to have a strange artistic conception. This was still outside. Although the valley was right in front of him, it gave him a strange feeling that it did not exist in heaven and earth. In the valley, the fragrance of hundreds of flowers floated. When mixed together, not only did it not affect the fragrance, but it also became more unique. The essence of hundreds of flowers rose, forming a faint layer of strange mist around the valley. It was hazy. In the air, countless colorful butterflies were dancing happily among the flowers. Vaguely, it felt like a dream. It was like a perfect scene that would only appear in a dream. Patter. They walked all the way to the entrance of the valley and stepped into the valley. Di Shetien is here to keep the appointment. I hope you won't blame me for disturbing you. He exhaled and his melodious voice spread into the valley. She did not rashly walk forward. I'm Chen Shi. I'm waiting for you in the valley. As soon as she finished speaking, an elegant and ethereal voice came from the valley. It was like the sound of nature. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 215. Then I'll be disturbing you. Just by listening to the voice, Di Shetien felt as if there was a clear spring water pouring into his heart. His entire mind unconsciously became comfortable. That unique sound of nature was probably hard to forget in the future. His initial curiosity was replaced by a natural feeling, as if he was paying a visit to an old friend. It made him have a kind of expectation to see the owner of the voice immediately. It was rude to come and visit. After all, he was once a human and grew up in Huaxia, an ancient country with a civilization of 5,000 years. Since he was young, he had come into contact with many etiquettes that ordinary people did not pay attention to. Although he grew up in the modern era, his nature was still traditional. Now that he was in the purple gold continent, the culture on the continent was like ancient times. Modern technology and civilization could not develop on this soil. After all, there were many immortal cultivators on the continent. As a result, some of his actions and mannerisms slowly became more ancient. After thinking for a while, he gently patted the storage bag. Waves of spiritual light appeared on the bag, and an ancient, 7-stringed ancient green zither appeared in his hand. This ancient zither looked like it had a unique style. There seemed to be traces of emu chi circulating in the zither. At the two ends of the zither, there were phoenixes flying in the air and phoenixes singing in harmony. The picture on the zither was vivid and lifelike, as if it really existed. Looking at it made people feel relaxed and happy. This zither was called the Fenghuan zither. It was a treasure that Sakura had obtained after killing those demon souls in the zither domain. Of course, this was only an artifact embryo. Although the quality of the artifact embryo wasn't as miraculous as the purple drum he obtained back then, just the artifact embryo alone had the grade of a magic treasure. However, this Fenghuan zither was also a high-grade magic treasure. If it was refined, it would not be an exaggeration to say that it was a top-grade magic treasure. If it was used as a natal magic treasure and nurtured carefully, it was not impossible for it to be promoted to a magic treasure immediately. He held the zither in his hand. He walked into the valley. Outside the valley and inside the valley, the artistic conception and even the scenery in front of him were like heaven and earth. A gentle breeze brushed past his face, and the fragrance of hundreds of flowers entered his nose. Moreover, every time he breathed, he seemed to be able to smell a completely different fragrance. After 100 breaths, he could experience hundreds of different fragrances. It was really soothing to the heart. It made people reluctant to leave, unknowingly immersed in it. An artistic conception similar to that of Tang Bohu's Song of the Peach Blossom Nunnery rose in his heart. Inside the Peach Blossom Nunnery, below the Peach Blossom Nunnery, below the Peach Blossom Nunnery, rose. The Peach Blossom Immortal planted peach trees and picked peach blossoms to exchange for wine money. When he was sober, he would sit in front of the flowers, and when he was drunk, he would sleep under the flowers. Half drunk and half awake, day after day, flowers wither and bloom year after year. I wish I would die in wine, and not bow before chariots and horses. Carriage dust and horse footsteps are visible, wine cups and flower branches are hermit's fate. If one were to compare a hermit to a hermit, one would be on the ground while the other would be in the sky. If we compare wine and flowers to carriages and horses, how can I be idle when they are busy? The world laughs at me for being too crazy, and I laugh at them for not being able to see through me. He did not see the tombs of the heroes of the 5 mausoleums, nor did he see the fields without flowers, without wine, without hoe. The 100 Flowers Valley is indeed the 100 Flowers Valley. The scenery here is even more otherworldly than my myriad demon valley. It's hard not to be fast when cultivating in a place like this. Di Shitian took a deep breath and walked in the direction of the voice. He glanced around and saw a pond in front of him. There was an elegant pavilion in the middle of the pond, and a girl in a lavender palace dress was standing at the side of the pavilion. She was looking at the lotus flowers outside the pavilion, and the vermilion bird beside her was chirping about something. Along the way, he saw countless flowers competing with each other. All kinds of strange flowers had their own style, and peonies were the most common. This also confirmed the vermilion bird's words that her sister liked peonies. The valley was not big, and it did not take long for him to walk into the pavilion. The girl stood with her back to him, and he could not see her face clearly. Just her back alone was enough to mesmerize people, and she exuded a unique elegance and nobility. But it could not be hidden. It flowed naturally. From this, he could also guess that she must be a peerless beauty. Di Shitian, I took the liberty to visit you. I obtained this artifact by chance. I hope you don't dislike it. Di Shitian looked at the back in front of him and said without a word. Then, she put the guqin in her hand on the jade table in the pavilion. This time, it was Chen Shi who invited you to come. It's good that you can come. There's no need to bring a gift. The young girl slowly turned around and suddenly, that peerless face that could even cause the downfall of a country with words gradually appeared in front of Sakra's eyes. Simple and elegant, noble, graceful and elegant, and also natural and gentle. It was difficult to describe this unique temperament with a single word. It seemed that she had both. She was elegant, noble, graceful, and so on. She gave people a feeling that they couldn't help but have a good impression of her. My name is Di Shitian. You are a senior of the demon clan in the Southern Barbarian. Please don't be rude when you come to visit. It's just a gift. Please don't refuse it. You can just call me Shitian. When Di Shitian saw Chen Shi's peerless face, he couldn't help but be immersed in it. However, fortunately, he had seen many peerless faces before. In terms of appearance, Baihu was not inferior to her at all. However, the beauty of the two was different. Baihu was reflected in the kind of natural charm that flowed out of her. Chen Shi, on the other hand, was different. The moment he saw her, his heart couldn't help but thump. There was an inexplicable rhythm. He didn't dare to look at her more. Sister, brother Di, you can stay here. You're being polite, I'm being polite. Since we're all together, it's good to sit and talk. Junio's eyes showed a hint of slyness. She looked at Chen Shi for a while and then looked at Di Shitian for a while, and said with a smile. After saying that, she even landed on the table first. On the table, there were already several kinds of spiritual fruits placed, and a pot of fine wine permeated the air. Well, Chen Shi doesn't like to be polite. Here are some fruits that are still edible. You can taste them. And this pot of wine is the 100 Flowers fairy wine that Chen Shi personally brewed. I heard that Shitian's Valley also has monkey wine. It's a good opportunity to taste this wine and see how it is. The two sat down facing each other. Chen Shi stretched out her snow-white hand, gently picked up the wine pot, and reached in front of Di Shitian to help fill the wine cup. Looking at the perfect hand and a unique body fragrance, he couldn't help but be lost in thought for a while. However, he immediately turned around. In this regard, he couldn't help but secretly cry in his heart, Di Shitian, oh Di Shitian, what's wrong with you today? You're not like this usually. With my self-control, I shouldn't be so weak. He secretly warned himself. With a faint smile, he picked up the wine cup and looked at it. This wine was really extraordinary. It seemed sticky, but in fact, it was sparkling and translucent like jade. It was incomparably clear, like nectar. It looked very comfortable. When he put it in front of his nose and sniffed it gently, the faint wine fragrance entered his heart. There was the fragrance of flowers in the wine. It was fascinating. Then he took it to his mouth and poured it into his mouth. The wine flowed around the tip of his tongue, experiencing the charm of the wine. Suddenly, a picture appeared in his mind. It was as if he was in a field of flowers, and there were thousands of colorful butterflies flying around him. Tranquility, nature, and the various charms of flowers flashed in his heart one by one. It was as if one could appreciate the beauty of hundreds of flowers and thousands of colors in this wine. Each flower had its own unique charm. It was difficult to understand without careful observation, but it could be appreciated in this wine. The wine carried the strength of 100 flowers, the charm of 100 flowers. It could take people into a unique mood. Good wine. It's able to infuse the essence of the 100 flowers into the wine, leaving one with an endless aftertaste. It's as if you're truly in the midst of the flowers, forgetting to return. The name of the 100 Flowers celestial wine is indeed worthy of its name. Even among the spirit wines, it's a rare high grade. I really admire Miss Chen Shi for being able to brew such a fairy wine. After a long time, he opened his eyes and praised it generously. This charm alone could already be called a spirit wine. What's more, when it was swallowed into the stomach, there were all kinds of wonderful things. If you like it, Chen Shi can give you some when you leave. Chen Shi smiled elegantly. Then she filled the wine cup again. Looking at Di Shitian, she said, if Chen Shi remembers correctly, you were not born in the southern barbarian lands, but moved in from outside 2 years ago. Yes. Di Shitian did not hesitate, nodded, and agreed in a deep voice. This time you left the southern barbarian lands for more than a year and entered the secular world. Chen Shi, dare to ask, what do you think of the situation of the demon clan on the continent today? Chen Shi seemed to ask something else. Like pigs and sheep waiting to be slaughtered. Di Shitian's eyes flashed. He glanced at Chen Shi and said, some time ago, although the purpose of my departure was to learn zither skills in the secular world and did not set foot in the world of cultivators, I had a little contact and heard a lot of things. He took a deep breath, and his heart was very heavy. He said, in today's world of cultivators, the human clan alone occupies countless rare materials between heaven and earth. There are countless sects and families. On the continent, the number of the human clan is innumerable. The heroes who emerge are like carps crossing the river, and they have become the protagonists of the continent. But the demon clan has declined to the point where it is almost exterminated. We have been reduced to the point where cultivators can only eliminate demons, build a reputation, and seize the Niden to increase their cultivation. If we hold on for a long time, the day of our demon clan's extinction is not far away. He was not distressed, but deeply touched. He was deeply worried about himself, the difficult situation of the demon clan, and the status of the demon clan on the continent. The words above were definitely not alarmist talk. If they did not change, this situation would happen sooner or later. That's right. Think about how prosperous our demon clan was in the ancient times. But now it has declined to this point. Unfortunately, the reproduction speed of our demon clan can't be compared with that of human beings. The desire of human cultivators to exterminate the demon race has never disappeared. It's a pity that there hasn't been a peerless powerhouse in our demon clan since ancient times. Chen Shi said, and his face was faintly gloomy. Obviously, he felt the same way. She was also a demon clan. As long as she had some understanding of the current situation of the demon clan, she would not be indifferent. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen, please go to www.chidian.com. More chapters, support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 216. In fact, both Chen Shi and Di Shitian knew very well that the demon clan had fallen into such a situation not only because of external reasons, but also because of internal reasons. For example, it was difficult for the demon clan to have spiritual wisdom. The inheritance of the demon clan itself was broken. Many of the demon clan's most powerful secret methods were not passed down at all and were completely lost in the long river of time. Most of the demon clan didn't even have cultivation methods. They had been instinctively absorbing the spiritual chi of heaven and earth and the essence of the sun and moon. They didn't know how to use it. For example, demons were supposed to open up the meridians of the whole body and be able to channel the demon power. However, most of the demons were ignorant. They only knew to accumulate demon power in their bodies, but most of it was integrated into their bodies and couldn't be used. As a result, they couldn't tap their own potential and the chances of breaking through to become a demon beast were greatly reduced. Moreover, those who could become a demon clan. For example, the king of a certain clan. Even if such a demon clan gained sentience, they would not leave their own territory. They would do their own thing and stay in one place. Even if they were alone, they would not be able to do anything alone. Often, when they met a cultivator, they would gather a group of people and besiege them. No matter how powerful they were, they couldn't resist. They were scattered and not concentrated, just like chopsticks. One chopstick could be broken easily. If they were tied together, 10 or 100 chopsticks would be very difficult to break. Now the demon clan was like a pair of separated chopsticks. If they were broken one by one, they couldn't play much role at all. All these factors caused the demon clan to decline more and more and their situation to become more and more difficult. This point, with Di Shitian's eyesight, it could be said that he had long understood it. However, knowing was one thing. It was quite difficult to change. Therefore, he could only silently develop his own forces. From nothing to something. Only then could he have a unique cohesive force. Like the demon clan in the southern barbarian region, they were the kings of the demon clan. He also wanted to subdue them, but was it realistic? Demon clan was not like those demons and spirit beasts. They had their own wisdom. How could they easily surrender to other demon clans? It was not easy for Di Shitian. He had the ability to subdue them now. Otherwise, even if they were subdued, they would probably not listen to his orders. Since that was the case, why should he do it? He should first build his own team with his own hands. Let his subordinates grow, develop to a certain extent, and make a name for themselves. At that time, there would be no need to subdue them. Naturally, there would be demons coming to submit to him. Di Shitian and Chen Shi talked about various things while drinking. His initial wariness gradually disappeared. From their conversation, he could feel that Chen Shi did not harbor any hostility towards him. Coupled with the natural gentleness, they slowly became familiar with each other. The atmosphere became harmonious. At this moment, the vermilion bird appeared to be very sensible. It stood to the side and listened quietly without interrupting. There were some things that Zhong Xian didn't quite understand, so he tilted his head and fell into deep thought. Shitian, I'm sure you've been curious about my existence for a long time. Or rather, you've been suspicious. Why didn't I do anything when the human cultivators entered the southern barbarian lands in large numbers? Even when a core formation cultivator sneaked an attack on Sister Medusa. After drinking for 30 minutes, Chen Shi smiled elegantly, as if he was deliberately helping Di Shitian to get rid of the doubts in his heart. He suddenly mentioned. Di Shitian's eyes flashed. Indeed, he had always been extremely curious about Chen Shi. She was not among the demon beast kings in the southern barbarian lands. It was obvious that she must have already condensed an inner core. However, Such a powerhouse was so low-key in the southern barbarian lands, even to the point of being unknown. Only a few demon beast kings knew about her. Moreover, those who knew were all very respectful towards her. Or rather, it was not wrong to say that they respected her. She was obviously a powerhouse among the demon clan, a core formation demon. If she was willing to do anything back then, those thousands of cultivators would have been wiped out in an instant. The Lee family ancestor who sneaked an attack on Medusa could also be easily killed. Yet, he had never made a single move. It was as if she didn't care about the life and death of the southern barbarian demon clan at all. Even so, she was still able to make the Black Ape King and the others respect her. If it wasn't strange, then there must be a secret behind it. Back then, Di Shitian felt that Chen-Shi was too mysterious because of these things, so he didn't dare to come here rashly. He had postponed it until today. Now that he came here, he wanted to know the reason. That's right. I'm really puzzled about this. Although I don't know how strong you are, I can see that as long as you do something, those crises in the past can be easily resolved. Moreover, I don't understand why there are still cultivators who dare to enter the southern barbarian lands to hunt spirit beasts and demons when you're in the southern barbarian lands. Logically speaking, all of this can be avoided. Di Shitian asked without hesitation. So, when you entered the southern barbarian lands back then, you used your methods against those cultivators who entered the southern barbarian lands. You even got the underworld raven, the Black Ape King, and the others to join forces and kill thousands of cultivators. Chen-Shi seemed to casually mention something. Di Shitian's heart froze. The demonic qi in his body began to condense in an instant. He had always thought that this was a rather secretive thing, but he never expected that Chen-Shi would see through it. Looking at his words, it was almost as if he had seen it with his own eyes. How could he not be shocked? It was as if stormy waves had been stirred up in his heart. Don't be nervous. I don't mean to blame you. Chen-Shi chuckled softly and said, perhaps what you did was not wrong. Blindly enduring and giving in might not be a good way to survive. However, do you know that although your actions back then seemed to be straightforward, it also sowed the seeds of disaster? She really did not have any intention of blaming him for what happened back then. Every demon clan had their own thoughts. Some were tolerant, some were silent, and some were unwilling to be left out. They had ambitions. Of course, from Di Shitian's point of view, there was nothing wrong with what happened back then. From Chen-Shi's point of view, she had to consider the safety of the entire southern barbarian lands. It was really difficult to say clearly. So what if it's the root of disaster? A man should be strong. My demon clan has been silent for too long. If we continue to be silent, we will not be far from extinction. I, Di Shitian, am definitely not someone who can be trampled on. Whoever wants to kill me, I will kill them. Whoever wants to kill me, must pay a sufficient price. I don't think I did anything wrong back then. It was a disaster, but also an opportunity. It depends on whether I can grasp it. Di Shitian's heroic spirit suddenly rose, and an indescribable expression appeared on his face. Faintly, there was a natural pride. Right or wrong, it doesn't matter now. Chen-Shi smiled indifferently and did not continue to talk about that topic. Instead, she changed the topic and said, in fact, my existence has always been a secret in the southern barbarian lands. The immortal cultivators have never given up on destroying my demon clan. However, my demon clan is not without a trump card. Legend has it that there are still some big demons in hibernation. If you really want to wake them up, the human immortal cultivators may not be able to bear the consequences of mutual destruction. However, the attention to the demon clan has never decreased. They pay special attention to the demon king of the demon clan. If they find the demon king and can kill it, they will definitely send strong people to kill it. The demon clan that has formed an inner core will not be let go. The immortal cultivators don't want to give the demon clan any chance to develop. If I take action, my existence will definitely not be hidden from the immortal cultivators. At that time, once those big sects make up their minds, they will definitely send strong people to the southern barbarian lands. At that time, not only will I be in danger, But even the entire demon clan in the southern barbarian lands will not be able to escape. If I don't take action, only a few demon clans in the southern barbarian lands will be hunted down and killed. But if I take action, 1 or 2 of them will die. Chen, she said with a strange kind of tiredness and sigh. Such a thing pressed on her shoulders, and the condemnation she received from time to time had already made her a little tired. So that's how it is. Damn it. When Di Shitian heard this, his 2 eyes suddenly constricted, and the wine cup in his hand was crushed into powder on the spot with a pa sound. The wine sprinkled between his fingers, and his face was cold. He said, I, Di Shitian, don't believe that the immortal cultivators can be strong forever. I don't care about others who stop the demon clan from being strong, but my myriad demon valley will never surrender. There was a trace of firmness in his voice. There was a kind of persistence. No one could stop the development of the myriad demon valley. This would be his foundation. Do you know that my 100 Flowers Valley is actually a place of inheritance of the southern barbarian demon clan? And I am the guardian of the inheritance. At this time, Chen Shi suddenly threw out an even more shocking statement. A place of inheritance. Di Shitian said in surprise. Yes. Chen Shi nodded and said, Chen Shi was born in the 100 Flowers Valley because of an opportunity. What's more, I got the inheritance of the fairy of 100 flowers of the demon clan. I inherited everything she left in the valley. Among them, there are some ancient books and cultivation methods left by the demon clan. After sorting them out, I made them a place for the inheritance of the demon clan. Any demon clan, as long as they can be promoted to a demon king, can come to the valley to choose a cultivation method to cultivate. Underworld Raven and the others came to the valley to choose in the past. This sentence was like a heavy bomb exploding in the bottom of his heart. Di Shitian's eyes immediately became brighter than ever. He had always been very clear that a cultivation method absolutely had immeasurable benefits for a demon clan's cultivation. Without a cultivation method, every step forward required a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, as well as years. Back then, if he hadn't obtained the bloodline inheritance and obtained the Tiger Raw technique, he would still be an ordinary tiger in Tiger Hill. How could he have today's achievements? Not to mention his current cultivation level. Everything proved how important a cultivation method was. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. More chapters, support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 217. He really didn't expect that there would be such a big surprise in front of him. He thought to himself, the Tiger Raw technique is not very useful for my future cultivation. Once I condense the Niden, there will be no follow-up cultivation method. Originally, I wanted to find a way to cultivate temporarily by building the demon vein. If there is a cultivation method passed down by the demon clan that I can choose, it can make up for my shortcomings in this aspect. I can also choose a cultivation method from among them. Di Shitian suddenly looked at Chen Shi with bright eyes. Not only did he not feel clear about Chen Shi, but he also felt that she seemed to be shrouded in a fog, full of magical colors, making people unable to see through her. Just a short conversation gave him an incomparable shock. It seemed that nothing in the southern wilderness could be hidden from her eyes. Not only was her cultivation mysterious, but she also said something about the inheritance of the demon clan. After coming to the Zijin mainland, Chen Shi could be said to be the most mysterious and the most unfathomable person he had met so far. Of course. Chen Shi smiled and said, as long as you can become a demon king, you are qualified to come to the 100 Flowers Valley to choose a demon cultivation method. With your cultivation, it is already enough. That's why I asked the vermilion bird to invite you over. However, in Chen Shi's opinion, it seems that you have already had a demon cultivation method. Moreover, you should be walking the path of ancient demon cultivation. I don't know if Chen Shi is wrong. She casually glanced at Di Shitian. This glance was very clear, but it had a feeling that she could see through people. The definition of a demon king was not complicated. In the demon clan, when promoting to a demon beast, there was a high chance that they could stimulate their own innate magical powers. Of course, many demon beasts couldn't stimulate their innate magical powers because of their lack of foundation. There were only a few demon beasts that could have innate magical powers, and these demon beasts that could stimulate their innate magical powers were called demon kings. Innate magical powers represented potential. It was the symbol of a king. Ancient yarrow cultivators? Di Shitian couldn't help but ask in confusion. He himself relied on the inheritance of his bloodline to step onto the path of demons, so he was naturally very lacking in various kinds of understanding. How could he understand whether or not the ancient era was ancient, so it was inevitable for him to be puzzled. Chen Shi smiled gently. Seeing Di Shitian's puzzled expression, he guessed that Di Shitian might not understand the difference. This was not strange. The yarrow race had lost their inheritance many years ago. The monster clan was also born and nurtured by the heavens and grew up on their own. They were not like the human clan, who could have families and sects to pass down their legacies. You have only cultivated for a short period of time, and you haven't received any guidance from the demon race's seniors. Perhaps you don't know that there are two paths to cultivation in our demon race. One is to focus on our demon body. After we reach the demon beast realm, we begin to form our demon veins. Through the demon body. Therefore, when the demonic chi was channeled, it would naturally nourish the demonic body and strengthen the demonic body. The number of demonic veins one had was related to one's cultivation method. Usually, different cultivation methods would result in different demonic veins. It was molded according to the cultivation method. This is the ancient demon cultivation. At this moment, Chen Shi was like a tireless scholar, helping to answer Di Shitian's doubts and instilling some things about the demon race, cultivation, and even various problems. In this aspect, Chen Shi's breadth of mind was something that few people could match. Among the demon race, most of the demon race would cultivate on their own even if they were to cultivate. Who would so easily divulge what they knew? But she did. Originally, she could have kept all the demonic cultivation methods she obtained in the 100-Flower Valley to herself, but she still opened them up to the other demonic clans. All of these things clearly showed that she was not alone. In Chen Shi's heart, he was also looking forward to the day when the demon race could develop. He wanted to enhance the strength of the demon race as much as possible and strengthen the foundation of the southern barbarian lands. In the bottom of his heart, Di Shitian slowly understood why the demon kings in the southern barbarian lands showed such a respectful expression when they heard Chen Shi's name. It turns out that building demonic veins is the way of ancient demon cultivation. Then what is the second cultivation method? Di Shitian asked curiously. Unconsciously, he began to immerse himself in this strange knowledge. The second way is not to build demonic veins, but to overcome the power of the transformation tribulation. At the moment of condensing the Niden and transforming, the meridians in the body are all modeled according to the human body. The human body is a natural Taoist body. The human body and the meridians of the human body are the most in line with the natural body of heaven and earth. The meridians correspond to the heavenly cycle and run through the whole body, like an independent small world. There is a saying that there is a small world in the body and a big world outside the body. Once the meridians of the whole body are molded, they can be closer to heaven and earth like human beings. Cultivation is twice the result with half the effort. It is easier to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. However, the tempering of the demon body will be slightly inferior. This path is now the orthodox path of demon cultivation. It is also faster to cultivate demon arts. Dawn went on to explain the second type of demonic cultivation method. Obviously, she knew a lot about it, and knew that the legacy of Goddess Manyflowers would be far more beneficial than the legacy of Sakura Buddha's own bloodline. It was understandable that she knew a lot. Then I wonder which of the two methods is stronger. Di Shitian's eyes flashed as he asked again. In the past, when he wanted to know, no one could explain for him. Now that there was a knowledgeable Chen Shi in front of him, how could he let go of such a great opportunity? Naturally, he would ask if he had any doubts. While Chen Shi was speaking, Zhongxian listened attentively, committing every single word to memory, not daring to miss out on a single word. Ancient demon cultivation is the closest to the essence of demon cultivation. Regardless of whether it is close combat or learning various demon arts, it can be both. Orthodox demon cultivation takes shortcuts and abandons the demon body. It is the fastest to start cultivating. It can cultivate various demon arts, but in close combat, the demon body will be weaker than the demon body of ancient demon cultivation. In the end, it will be more difficult to advance. At the end, it is all the same. When Chen Shi heard Di Shitian's question, she couldn't help but nod inwardly. To be able to think of the pros and cons, he was very meticulous. Di Shitian already had a result in his mind. It seemed that ancient demon cultivation was difficult at first, then easy. Whether it was the demon body or demon essence, they were all cultivated side by side. As for orthodox demon cultivation, it was easy at first, then difficult. If one only chose one of them and gave up on cultivating the demon body, the speed of cultivation would naturally be much faster. And the path that could truly reach the peak of demon cultivation should be the path of ancient demon cultivation. According to Chen Shi, ancient demon cultivation walked the path of demon meridian formation, and this demon meridian formation seems to be different according to the cultivation method. The number of demon meridian formation and the method of formation are probably very particular. If I rashly form the 7 emotions and 6 desires meridian formation, would I have already created a unique ancient demon cultivation method? He pondered secretly in his mind. He couldn't help but think about this. Even for ancient demon cultivation, the speed of forming demon meridian was different. There was no method of forming a unique demon meridian in the Tiger Raw technique, but it was the orthodox method of using demon essence to condense and shape. If the demon meridian was formed that way, it might be on the path of ancient demon cultivation, but it would only be an ordinary ancient demon cultivation. And forming the 7 emotions and 6 desires meridian might accidentally be on the right path. After chatting for a while, Sakura also mentioned that he wanted to make a trip to the land of inheritance to choose a cultivation method. Chen Shi didn't stop him. He let the vermilion bird lead him there. The land of inheritance was deep in the valley. Under the vermilion bird's lead, they came to a quaint cast cave. In front of the cave, there were 2 strange golden flowers the size of a small house. The strange flower was extremely ugly. It had a large, ferocious mouth filled with sharp teeth. It was a terrifying sight to behold. One on the left and one on the right, standing on both sides of the cave. It was frightening. Big brother Di, these 2 flowers are called man-eating flowers. They are very powerful. Big sister sent them to guard this cave. Usually, without big sister's orders, anyone who approaches this place will be devoured by them. But don't worry, with Zhu'er here, they won't hurt anyone. Brother Di, hurry up and go in. Remember, you can only stay in there for 4 hours. When the time is up, come out. The vermilion bird called out clearly. Looking at the 2 man-eating flowers in front of the cave, she was not afraid at all. Man-eating flowers? Di Shitian sized them up carefully and felt the ferocious aura emitted from their bodies. Looking at the 2 big mouths, he was secretly shocked. Those mouths were full of teeth, as if they were ready to devour the living beings in front of them at any time. They were unusually ferocious. Vaguely, they gave him a strong sense of threat. However, he didn't stay for long and entered the cave. As soon as they entered, a huge dragon-breaking stone fell down from the cave entrance and sealed the exit. There were luminous pearls illuminating the cave, making it as bright as day. All kinds of things could be seen clearly. Time was limited, so he ignored everything else and walked quickly into the depths. Seeing the dragon-breaking stone falling, the vermilion bird flapped her wings and quickly flew back to the pavilion. In the blink of an eye, she returned to the pavilion and saw that Chen Shi was still sitting inside. She retracted her wings and landed on the jade table. Looking at Chen Shi slyly, she called out, "Sister, what do you think of my brother Di?" Di Shitian's cultivation speed is indeed very fast. However, the reason for this should be because he has unlocked the bloodline inheritance and obtained some kind of cultivation method from the inheritance. That's why he can cultivate to his current realm without any obstacles. However, something seems to have gone wrong with him. I feel a strange sadness from him. What's even stranger is that this sadness doesn't seem to be something that he has. This makes me a little confused. She had a puzzled expression. At some point, a faint purple petal appeared between her slender fingers. She played with it gently. Hey, sister, that's not what I'm asking. To be continued. If you want to know what happens next, please go to www.chidyen.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 218. Then what do you want to ask? She shook her head and looked at Junio with a chuckle. Zhu is asking, sister, do you like Big Brother Di? Junio asked with a smile. However, judging from her tone, it was mostly a joke. It was just a kind of teasing. Hey, Zhu, what are you thinking about in that little head of yours? She's face couldn't help but blush. She said, it's the first time I've met Di Shitian. How can I like him? At most, I'm just a little curious. Curious, indeed, just curious. With her cultivation, she couldn't see through what kind of cultivation method Di Shitian practiced at a glance. Why did she have a strange sense of sadness? Moreover, Di Shitian's actions unconsciously aroused her curiosity. There were 2 big demon clans gathered in the myriad demon valley, and there were actually several demon beasts. Thousands of spirit beasts. She couldn't help but secretly raise her eyebrows at this speed of development. Also, the strategies and tricks that he kept showing subverted her understanding in her heart. Like the conversation just now, in fact, for other monster kings, she had never had such a conversation. Just curious. Zhu just saw Big Brother Di in a daze for a long time when he saw you. If Big Brother Di becomes my brother-in-law, then Zhu will be able to drink wine every day. As Junio spoke, she suddenly talked about wine. Her eyes immediately lit up. Zhu, don't let your imagination run wild. I've never thought about these things. Sister's heavenly tribulation is coming soon. This heavenly tribulation is very important to me. There can't be the slightest mistake. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'll be consigned to eternal damnation. She raised her eyes and looked at the void. Her eyes were full of indescribable colors. There was a faint trace of anxiety. The heavenly tribulation this time was far too important to her. It could be said that it was related to her life's achievements. It was a tribulation that all vegetation spirits had to overcome. Once they passed it, they would be able to completely fuse with their bodies. When that time came, their cultivation would be able to progress at a tremendous pace. They would truly step onto the path of demon cultivation. On the other hand, if he couldn't, what awaited him would be eternal damnation. Elder sister, Zhu believes that you will definitely be able to get through this. Otherwise, I'll invite Big Sister Medusa and the others over for the tribulation transcendence. There won't be a problem. The vermilion bird's tone was unusually firm. Yes. She nodded elegantly. She didn't say anything and just sat quietly in the pavilion. The 100-flower essence in the valley immediately rushed into her body like swallows returning to their nest. Under the contrast of the colorful 100-flower essence, Shi's body had a faint mysterious color. He was like the king of flowers. At this time, Di Shitian had entered the cave of inheritance. He walked all the way to the end of the cave. At the end of the cave, he discovered a row of shelves refined from stone. On these shelves, ancient books were placed upon them. These ancient books were not stored in jade slips, but were instead made from various spirit bamboos, spirit trees, and even animal skins. It was just like the bamboo slips from the spring and autumn period. Placed on the shelves, they looked unusually simple and unadorned. Casually glancing around, Di Shitian also discovered that there weren't many ancient books here. There were only a dozen or so volumes. However, he wasn't surprised. There had been a lapse in the demon race. Various demon cultivation methods had long been lost. To be able to preserve a dozen or so volumes was already quite a feat. It was even more fortunate to be able to observe them. Time was short, so he didn't waste any time. He walked forward and saw a bamboo slip made of bamboo at the top. He reached out and took the bamboo slip down and quickly opened it. Dark Yin Moon Howling Technique, the name of the cultivation method, fell into his eyes. Just by looking at the name of this cultivation method, he could see that this was a demon cultivation method that leaned towards yin and cold. It didn't seem to match Di Shitian. However, he didn't put it down. Instead, he quickly browsed through it. As he browsed, he carefully memorized every word in it in his mind. Relying on his photographic memory, he had to memorize this cultivation method by force. For someone who only knew how to memorize and didn't deliberately try to understand the meaning, the speed at which he browsed through it could be said to be quite fast. It didn't take long for him to memorize this demonic cultivation method. Then, without hesitation, he put the cultivation method back and picked up another ancient book. Cultivation methods are the foundation for the continuation of a race. Originally, I planned to find a way to go to other places in the future to find some ancient books in the cultivation world for Kai Hua and the others to cultivate in the future. I didn't expect to be able to fulfill my wish in the 100 Flowers Valley in advance. It seems that the heavens are helping me. Sakura diligently memorized the contents of the ancient book, and at the same time, he secretly pondered in his mind. He had never neglected the importance of cultivation methods. In fact, it could be said that he attached great importance to them. However, it wasn't as easy to obtain ancient books as he imagined. Back then, after exterminating thousands of cultivators, the various ancient books obtained were only some basic cultivation methods. They were all chi refinement cultivation methods, and most of them were duplicates. There were only a dozen books that were truly useful in total. Not a single book that was truly helpful for cultivation. Originally, he planned to find a way to get some in the cultivation world in the future. However, the cultivation methods in the cultivation world were different from those of the demon clan. Even if he found them, they might not be directly useful. The problem that had always been in the bottom of his heart was finally solved today. The inherited cultivation methods of the 100 Flowers Valley. If he memorized all of them and silently wrote them down one by one after returning to the valley, they would be passed down as the cultivation methods of the valley. At that time, Kai Hua and the others would be able to choose their own cultivation methods to cultivate. Then, the speed of cultivation and even the strength of the cultivators would improve greatly as a result. Cultivation methods and books had always been the foundation for the continuation of a civilization. Di Shitian had long had an idea in mind. That was to build a place in the valley specifically to store cultivation methods and ancient books, such as the Sutra Depository. In the future, all the ancient books and cultivation methods they obtained would be stored there. Then, the demon clan in the valley would no longer have to worry about not having cultivation methods. Of course, there was still a long way to go. He carefully memorized the contents of each ancient book. In this way, his speed was extremely fast. He only held each book in his hand for a while, then put it down again and picked up another ancient book to read. During this reading, Di Shitian also discovered something. Indeed, each of these ancient books was a cultivation method for demon cultivation. However, the strange thing was that most of these cultivation methods were orthodox demon cultivation methods. There was only one ancient demon cultivation method. That ancient book was called the Celestial Demon God Slaying Technique. Di Shitian also focused on this ancient book. He found that even this cultivation method was not complete. It was just an incomplete book. Only the first half was recorded, and the second half was not recorded. It seemed that it had been lost long ago. Even so, this cultivation method was extraordinary. Its cultivation method was not demonic at all. It was a supreme cultivation method to cultivate in the midst of slaughter. The demon meridian created was indeed different from the ordinary demon meridian recorded in the Tiger Roar technique. The demon meridian created was called the God-slaying meridian. It was formed from boundless killing intent and ferocious chi. If it was successfully created, its killing power would be unparalleled. The more one killed, the stronger the power, and the faster one's cultivation would increase. If one could kill millions, their power would be so strong that they could slay gods. It was a demonic art that grew in the midst of slaughter. Cultivating it was destined to stir up a boundless rain of blood. It was a cultivation method that advanced forward over thousands of corpses. And this incomplete book could be cultivated all the way to the great demon realm. As for how to cultivate after that, it was not clear. However, even so, great demons were experts that could move unhindered between heaven and earth. Cultivating the celestial demon god slaying technique would increase one's battle strength and could challenge those of a higher level. Unparalleled killing power. What a domineering cultivation method. It is indeed to create the demon meridian. According to the description of this cultivation method, the demon meridian was the foundation if one followed the path of ancient demon cultivation. The creation of each demon meridian could push the cultivation method to a new level. The method of creation was related to the operation of the cultivation method. The more demon meridian, the more complete the cultivation method. The celestial demon god slaying technique actually requires the creation of 12 demon meridian. It penetrates the entire body and uses the killing power to temper the demon body. It is indeed incisive and miraculous. Although it was only an incomplete book, one could tell two from one and see the essence of ancient cultivation methods. It was exactly as Chen Shi had said. Each of the created demon meridian had its own function and could connect the qi and blood around the body. It penetrated the entire body. It was closely linked together. The more demon meridian, the more exquisite the cultivation method, and the higher the grade. For example, the celestial demon god slaying technique recorded that there were a total of 12 demon meridian that required the creation of demon meridian. This was already the rarest supreme cultivation method of ancient demon cultivation. It was a supreme cultivation method that could reach the peak. Unfortunately, there were only 6 of them here. The remaining 6 did not record how to create them at all. They had already been lost. 12 Fey veins is already a top cultivation technique among ancient cultivation techniques. If I were to create the desire veins of the 7 emotions and 6 desires, wouldn't that mean that I could create 13 veins? That would be one more vein than this celestial Fey god slaying technique. He could not help but feel restless. If that was really the case, then perhaps the path that he had taken was really the right one. He could really walk a completely different path and create a supreme cultivation method of demon cultivation. However, this thought immediately cooled down. How difficult was it to create a cultivation method? It was definitely not something that could be created overnight. The 7 emotions and 6 desires meridian was one of the most difficult desires in the world for living beings to grasp. Even touching it required one to be careful, for fear of being immersed in it. To create a cultivation method with this as the foundation was undoubtedly an extremely difficult matter. Without great wisdom and great perseverance, it would be like the moon in the water, a flower in the mirror. It would be nothing more than an illusory bubble. To be continued. If you want to know what happens next, please visit www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 219. However, it seems that I have no other way out. He scanned the dozen or so ancient scrolls in front of him. He had already memorized more than half of them. Among these ancient scrolls, there was an important book that outlined all kinds of common knowledge about demon cultivation. It was called the Demon Awakening Record. It was not a demonic cultivation art, but a basic demonic book that was given to spiritual beasts and demons that had just gained intelligence to understand demon cultivation. It recorded some simple information about the differences between ancient demonic cultivators and orthodox demonic cultivators, as well as the things to pay attention to during cultivation. It also recorded some of the problems one would encounter during cultivation, from spirit beasts to demons, and so on. The Demon Awakening Record had a summary of everything. The Demon Awakening Record had the word awaken in it, which meant that this was a demonic book that enlightened the demon race. By the way, the ancient scrolls here were all recorded using a strange method. The words on them were the demon race's demon language. This demon language was very strange. Even if you didn't recognize it, as long as you were from the demon race, you would naturally understand the meaning of the words after seeing it. It seemed to be an innate ability of the demon race. In the book, he discovered something that made him smile bitterly. Orthodox demon cultivation was fine. When the meridians in the body condensed into an inner core, they would be exactly the same as the meridians in the human body. Therefore, the cultivation techniques that they cultivated, even the cultivation techniques that immortal cultivators cultivated, could be easily cultivated. However, after cultivating, the characteristics of the demon aura would not change. It was briefly mentioned in the book that in ancient times, the reason why humans were able to rise to power was because they had learned cultivation techniques from the demon clan. It could be said that the origin of human cultivation techniques was actually derived from the demon clan. That wasn't all. What truly made Sakura smile bitterly and cry out that he was caught in a trap of his own making was that he discovered one thing. The ancient demon cultivators walked the path of building demon meridians, and that demon meridians were extraordinarily important. If one followed the method in the roaring tiger technique, it would be like a blank piece of paper. It would have no characteristics. This also meant that if one wanted to cultivate another technique, there would be no hindrance. One could directly dye the white paper with other colors. In other words, if he had formed his demonic meridian normally back then, he could have easily switched to cultivating the celestial fiend divine slaying technique. But now, he had formed the desire meridian, the sorrow meridian. If he wanted to cultivate other techniques, he would have to abolish his grief meridian. However, it was difficult to create a demon vein, and even more difficult to destroy it. Unless one had the unique elixir of the demon clan, the meridian cleansing elixir. Legend had it that the elixir was made from a kind of spiritual fruit called the dustless fruit. It could only be refined with the help of various medicinal materials and secret methods. The dustless fruit usually only grew on the kind of ethereal cliffs where the essence of the sun and the moon was gathered. It absorbed the essence of the clouds and mist, and by chance, it could grow into a dustless tree. It was a rare sight. Even if he could find it, the refining method of the meridian cleansing pill had been lost for God knows how many years. In other words, due to his grief meridian, he had almost no other way to cultivate other cultivation methods. There is no such thing as an absolute demon. I don't believe that I can't create a cultivation method that belongs to me. He secretly made up his mind. Since there was no way out, he could only keep moving forward. However, to create a cultivation method, he had to have sufficient knowledge and a solid foundation. Otherwise, everything would be like the moon in the water, or a castle in the air. With a firm belief in his heart, the ancient scrolls in front of him became even more precious. Seeing that more than half the time had passed, he did not hesitate and continued to memorize the contents of the ancient scrolls one by one, deeply imprinting them in his heart. With his photographic memory, he had already memorized all the ancient scrolls on the shelf by the time was up. As for the rest, he could slowly think about it when he went back. After reading the ancient scrolls, there was no point in staying in the land of inheritance any longer. He put everything back and walked to the entrance of the cave with firm steps. Strangely enough, the dragon-breaking stone that originally fell down slowly rose again when he came out. The first thing he saw was the vermilion bird that was flying happily in front of the cave. "Big brother Di, you've come out. Big sister has been waiting for you." The vermilion bird happily folded her wings and landed on his shoulder with her petite body. "That's good. I was just about to thank your sister." Di Shitian smiled faintly. Thinking of the huge gains he had gained in the cave, his usually indifferent expression became much gentler. "Hee, then let's go quickly." With the vermilion bird by his side, the two man-eating flowers outside the cave did not move at all. Of course, if someone came alone in the situation, they would probably go crazy on the spot. It would not be a pleasant thing to be swallowed into their ugly mouths. Not long after, they returned to the pavilion again. When Chen Shi saw Di Shetian, he nodded slightly and said, "There are not many ancient scrolls of the demon clan in the 100 Flowers Valley. I don't know if you have chosen a suitable cultivation method in there." "Not at all. There may not seem to be many ancient scrolls in there, but in fact, they are the most I have ever seen. This time, you let me enter and choose a cultivation method. I won't say any more words of thanks. If there is anything in the future, just send someone to the Myriad Demon Valley to inform me." If there is anything, I will come as soon as possible. Di Shitian nodded slightly. Although taking out various cultivation methods was voluntary behavior of Chen Shi, it was undeniable that he owed her a favor. He had always been clear about kindness and hatred. No matter if it was hatred or kindness, as long as there was a chance, he would not tolerate it. He did not like the feeling of owing people things. This time, the cultivation methods he memorized in the Cave of Inheritance were of great importance to the development of the myriad Demon Valley. He had to remember this favor. When he saw the Black Ape King and others, they all showed a respectful look when they mentioned Chen Shi. Now, he had a deep understanding. They all got precious cultivation methods from her, so how could they not be respectful? Chen Shi nodded and smiled faintly. Without saying more about this matter, they sat down together in the pavilion. You left the southern barbarian lands this time and went to the secular world. I don't know if you have heard of something. You mean? He raised his eyebrows and looked at Chen Shi in confusion. Heavenly Demon Secret Realm. Chen Shi opened her red lips slightly and spat out a sentence. This sentence also made Di Shitian's heart skip a beat. His eyes immediately fell on Chen Shi's unparalleled face, and he thought to himself, how does she know about this? Logically speaking, she should have stayed in the southern barbarian lands and never gone out. However, from this sentence, he understood that Chen Shi must have known about the Heavenly Demon Secret Realm for a long time, so there was no need to hide it. He nodded and said, I have indeed heard of it. When I was outside, I overheard many cultivators talking about the Heavenly Demon Secret Realm. It is said that the Heavenly Demon Secret Realm only opens once every few thousand years, and every time it opens, it will attract most of the cultivators. The Heavenly Demon Secret Realm has the word Heavenly Demon. Could it be that this secret realm has something to do with our demon clan? His eyes flashed. Long ago, he had a faint feeling that this secret realm should be related to the demon clan. Or, it should be left behind by the ancestors of the demon clan. Chen Shi looked at Di Shitian with more attention in her eyes. She nodded and said, yes, the Heavenly Demon Secret Realm is a secret realm left behind by an expert of the demon clan who had reached the Heavenly Demon Realm in antiquity times. It is said that in the secret realm, not only were there countless treasures that he collected in his life left behind. He also left behind his inheritance. A large number of secret treasures of the demon clan. Most importantly, there is a pagoda in the secret realm. Speaking of the pagoda, even her expression slowly became serious. She seemed to be very concerned. Pagoda? Di Shitian muttered doubtfully. Yes, this pagoda is said to be the most precious treasure that the heavenly demon carried with him. It has the ability to defy the natural order. Every time the secret realm opens, our demon clan will send experts, including the demon king, to enter the secret realm to see if they can obtain the inheritance of the heavenly demon and inherit everything in the secret realm. The experts of the demon clan, from low to high cultivation, were Spirit Beast, Spirit Monster, Demon Beast, Demon King, Great Demon, Demon Saint, Heavenly Demon, and Demon Immortal. The Demon Immortal realm, the highest level, was already a peerless expert in the world. Experts who could reverse heaven and earth and reverse yin and yang were truly existences standing at the peak of the world. Since antiquity times, such experts could be counted on one's fingers. The heavenly demon was only one step away from the demon immortal realm, so one could imagine how strong he was. What kind of value did the secret realm left behind by such an existence have? Coupled with the inheritance of the heavenly demon, it was even more immeasurable. Previously in the Cave of Inheritance, he might not be clear about other things, but he was already clear about the division of the cultivation realms of the demon clan. Naturally, he could understand the value of the secret realm. You mean, when the secret realm opens, we southern barbarians will go in together? Di Shitian frowned slightly, pondered for a moment, and said, however, the current situation of our demon clan doesn't seem to be suitable for us to meet the immortal cultivators. This worry was not unreasonable. If the immortal cultivators and the demon clan went in together when the heavenly demon secret realm opened, they would not need to enter the secret realm. If they met each other, they would fight directly outside the secret realm. Given the current situation of the demon clan, If they fought head-on with the immortal cultivators, the result would be worrying. Who said that there is only one entrance to the heavenly demon secret realm? Chen Shi's lips curled into a mysterious smile. He said meaningfully. From the time Di Shitian entered the 100 Flowers Valley to the time he went out, he stayed for a full day. After leaving the 100 Flowers Valley, Di Shitian looked at the direction and rushed straight to the withered bone wilderness in the north. Sister, what do you think of Brother Di? He, don't tell Zhu that you don't have any opinions. The vermilion bird giggled as she blinked her eyes. After seeing Sakura leave, she once again questioned. Zhu clearly remembers that elder sister had never let anyone enter the Cave of Inheritance before. Even when the Black Ape King and the others came to choose a cultivation technique, it was elder sister who helped them choose. Today, you treated Brother Di very differently. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 220. The cultivation methods in the Cave of Inheritance were so important that no one would be allowed to enter easily. Once one entered, it would not be difficult to memorize the cultivation methods and ancient books. It could be said that the cultivation methods inside would be given to the other party. In the past, when Medusa and the others came, they did not receive the same treatment as Di Shitian did today. They all first told the direction they wanted to cultivate and some of their own situations, and then Chen Shi chose the most suitable cultivation method for them to cultivate. It could be said that in the 100 Flowers Valley, or even the entire southern barbarian, the number of demons who entered the Cave of Inheritance could be counted on one hand. However, this time, Chen Shi unexpectedly let Di Shitian enter the cave. This was simply giving him all the ancient books in the cave. Zhu, I told you a long time ago, don't think about these trivial things with your little head. Chen Shi helplessly stretched out her hand and gently knocked on the head of the vermilion bird. She looked at the void and murmured, hasn't your big brother Di been working hard to develop the Myriad Demon Valley? He is one of the few people who know how to develop their forces. The Myriad Demon Valley has great potential, but it lacks many necessary factors for development. Cultivation methods are one of them. Does sister want to help big brother Di? The vermilion bird's eyes lit up and looked at Chen Shi curiously. Yes, I feel a kind of temperament in Di Shitian that the Black Ape, the Golden Lion King, and Medusa don't have. It's as if he was born with a kind of king's temperament. He has the potential to lead a group of demons. Since he wants to be a king and develop a force, then I'll help him. I'll help him and see how far he can go. Perhaps, the situation of the southern barbarian might really change because of him. Chen Shi's eyes became a little deep, as if she was not looking at the void, but the distant future. Yes, Zhu also believes that big brother Di will definitely succeed. Sister, you didn't see that in the Myriad Demon Valley, there are thousands of spirit beasts. If they develop, they will definitely be very amazing. There was a faint confidence in Zhu's tone. Di Shitian rode the demonic wind and quickly swept through the southern barbarian lands, heading north in a straight line. The further they walked, the more desolate it became. In the northern part of the southern barbaric lands, it was practically a forbidden area that no living creature dared to approach. The desolation of bones was incomparably vast, and the bones within the desolation of bones were piled up like mountains. It was unknown how many were buried there, and just the aura of death emitted from the desolation of bones was sufficient to make it so that not many living creatures dared to live within a few thousand miles of the desolation of bones. Furthermore, in the wasteland, there was an extremely evil tree, the 10,000 bone-devouring soul tree. That tree was an evil tree that grew out of countless skeletons. It was a living evil tree. Such an evil tree was too sinister. Even the demon clan would not dare to casually live near it. Of course, besides the Nethercrow clan. The underworld Raven clan absorbed death energy to increase their cultivation, and they even had the saying of Death's clone. This place was forbidden to other demons, but it was the best place for them to live. Crack. In the silent wasteland, a crisp cracking sound suddenly rang out. Following the sound, they saw Sakura had already descended from the sky and stepped on a withered bone. The withered bone couldn't withstand his weight and broke into several pieces in an instant. It was broken. The bone marrow in this dried bone had basically dried up. I wonder where the bones of my tiger clan can be found in the desolation of bones. Di Shitian scanned the surroundings. There were dried bones everywhere. Of course, there were also incomplete bones. The complete ones could also be seen. Piles of white bones were presented in front of him. It was simply innumerable. From the many incomplete bones, he could see that many of them were the bones of various animals and birds. There were big ones and small ones. Many of them were more than 100 feet tall. They were probably some powerful ferocious beasts when they were alive. In front of him, there were even soul-devouring trees formed by skulls. In the eye sockets of those skulls, there was a faint green flame staring at him, making him feel a chill in his heart. A chill rushed directly from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. Fortunately, it was not Di Shitian's first time here. His heart sank. He took a deep breath. His eyes shone brightly. He reached out and patted his storage bag lightly. Suddenly, there was a flash of spiritual light and an ancient compass appeared in his hand. On the surface, this compass looked similar to the feng shui compasses used by feng shui masters. However, in the compass, there were 3 pointers of different lengths. From long to short, they were bronze, silver, and golden. There were small talismans on each of the pointers. In the middle of the compass, there was a sparkling white jade bead. It faintly emitted a white jade light, revealing a strange power. Embedded in the compass, it could be said to be natural without the slightest gap. It was as if it was born to be fused together. All around the compass, there were various mysterious patterns engraved. This compass was none other than a strange treasure that Di Shitian had obtained in the Tiger Hill Mountains, the psychic compass. This compass was a treasure that could be used to search for treasures. In the past few years, he had carefully studied the use of the compass and had secretly inquired about it in the Music Valley. Only then did he know the true use of the compass. It could be said that it was a first-class treasure when used to search for treasures. After quickly placing the original high-grade fire spirit stone on the compass, Di Shitian took out a tiger bone that he had obtained when he met Hua Wanwu. He cut a small piece and placed it in his hand. Immediately, the originally hard tiger bone turned into a fine powder. He sprinkled the tiger bone powder evenly on the compass. Whoosh! The talismans on the compass quickly flashed with spiritual light. Of the 3 pointers in the center of the compass, the third and second pointers began to spin quickly. The pointers emitted bursts of bronze and silver light and quickly spun. One had to know that in this psychic compass, the 3 pointers all had different powers. Now, only 2 of the pointers could move. They were the bronze and silver pointers. To use the compass, one must be supported by a spirit stone. A mid-grade spirit stone could support the compass to use the first psychic needle to search for things with spiritual energy within a mile. A high-grade spirit stone could use the second psychic needle. The second needle could search within a 10-mile radius. Di Shitian used a high-grade fire spirit stone, so he could use 2 of them. Once the pointers moved, they could search for all treasures within a 10-mile radius. As long as there was a treasure in any direction, the pointers would point to the treasure's location. However, there was another way to use the psychic compass. For example, if one wanted to search for a certain item, such as a spiritual wood, then one only needed to grind a small part of the spiritual wood into powder and sprinkle it on the pointers in the center of the compass. The pointers would then emit the spiritual wood's aura and specifically search for the whereabouts of the spiritual wood. This method was more precise. Di Shitian wanted to find the bones of the tiger clan. Hence, he had ground a small part of the tiger bone into powder and sprinkled it on the compass. This way, the compass would guide him to the whereabouts of the tiger clan's bones. If one followed the compass, they would definitely be able to easily find the tiger clan's bones. There's not much time left before the opening of the Sky Fae Mystic Realm. I have to refine a portable weapon. Back then, I said that I wanted to refine a weapon from the tiger clan's bones so that it could accompany me in battle. If I want to refine a weapon, the number of bones needed would definitely not be small. I'm afraid that I can only find all of them in the withered bone wilderness. Fortunately, I have the psychic compass with me. Otherwise, I'm afraid that I would have to spend a lot of time searching. Holding the compass in his hand, Sakra carefully stared at the direction where the needle in the compass rotated as he pondered inwardly. After his conversation with Chen Shi in the Centauria Valley, his desire for a weapon had reached its peak. Although the Seven Sins demonic zither was not bad, it was not suitable for close combat. In the Cave of Heritage, he had also learned that the path of ancient demon cultivation had always been extraordinary in battle. As the demon body grew stronger, there would be even greater potential in weapons. According to records, ancient demon cultivation was strong because of one's overall development, and the other was because of their demon body that constantly grew stronger. It was rumored that the martial cultivators among the human race were created with the help of the demon body. The purpose of martial cultivators was to refine their body into a martial body. The stronger the martial body, the stronger their strength would be until they reached the supreme state of an indestructible physical body. Martial cultivators could be said to be the most powerful type of cultivators among the immortal cultivators. However, the reference point for the creation of their cultivation techniques was the powerful demon body of the ancient demon clan. The monstrous body obtained from walking the ancient monstrous cultivation path would be extremely powerful. Compared to martial cultivators, it would have a natural advantage. It could be said that every ancient demon cultivation was the most powerful martial cultivator. Martial cultivators were strong in their physical bodies, close combat, and weapons. For an ancient demon cultivator, a good weapon was a treasure that could allow him to unleash his full power. Their combat strength could be increased by 30% or even 50% or 60% in an instant. Therefore, Di Shitian already had the idea of refining his own weapon. Now, he could not wait to leave the Centauria Valley. He did not go to other places, nor did he go to the Myriad Demon Valley. He directly rushed to the Withered Bone Wilderness for no other reason than to find enough tiger bones here and then return. He wanted to refine his second natal demon weapon. He had already thought of this weapon long ago. Among all kinds of weapons, the one he was most comfortable with was the saber. Therefore, this time, he wanted to refine a saber. Legend had it that in Huaxia mythology, the demon god Ju Yu's weapon was a saber. Moreover, that saber was called Tiger Soul. Its power was so strong that it could destroy heaven and earth. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 221. It was rumored that in Chinese mythology, during the ancient era of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, the tiger's soul was the weapon used by Kaiyu when he fought against the emperor. Kaiyu was a fierce barbarian, and the emperor had the help of the mysterious lady of the 9th heaven. Kaiyu was no match for the emperor, so he fed a meteorite to his mount. After the meteorite and the divine tiger's bloodline merged, he pulled out the tiger's tailbone and made it into a blade. The blade's frame was made from the tiger's bone, and the meteorite's essence was attached to it. It looked like a fishbone on the inside, and was transparent on the outside. The blade was about 5 feet long, and because it carried the divine tiger's boundless resentment, those who couldn't subdue it would all die an unnatural death. It was an extremely ominous weapon. Moreover, the tiger's soul blade became stronger the more it fought, and the more it killed, the stronger the evil aura and resentment within the blade. At its peak, a single slash of the blade could cause mountains to collapse and rivers to break. It truly possessed immeasurable power. Of course, Sakra had basically believed in the myths and legends of Huaxia after experiencing many things. In the ancient times of Huaxia, there should indeed be such things. Otherwise, what kind of angle should he use to explain the Zijin continent that he was in? Existence was reason. Since it could be passed down, then it must have happened before. The tiger's soul blade's tyrannical aura was awe-inspiring. It was a peerless, ominous weapon. Sakra was naturally very clear that if he wanted to forge the supreme power of the tiger soul in the hands of Kaiyu of Huaxia, relying on himself, he was afraid that it would be a fool's dream. Not to mention other things, what extraterrestrial meteorite, or even the tiger god, these were not things that he could find. He had carefully thought about it. It was almost impossible to forge such a peerless weapon in one go. He didn't have such extravagant hopes, and he carefully thought about it in his heart. He couldn't find the meteorite, and he couldn't find the divine tiger. However, there was a chance to find the tiger's bones. If he refined a large amount of them together, he might be able to forge a suitable battle blade. However, although the tiger's bones were much easier to find than the meteorite, he was a member of the tiger clan. It was impossible for him to slaughter his own clan for no reason. Then, if he wanted to search again, the only choice in the southern barbarian was to head to the Withered Bone Wasteland. The Withered Bone Wasteland stretched for more than 1,000 li, and who knew how many skeletons were buried there? Logically, it was impossible that there weren't any skeletons left behind by the tiger clan. Crash. The copper needle on the psychic compass rotated for a while before suddenly becoming motionless. The needle pointed straight ahead while the silver needle continued to rotate. Pure spirit force continued to flow into the compass from the spirit stones on the compass. The copper needle was searching for treasures within a radius of 1 mile. Now that the copper needle was still pointing forward, it meant that there was definitely a tiger skeleton buried in the area 1 li ahead. Moreover, the compass really lived up to its name as a unique treasure. It actually formed a map on the compass. The map wasn't detailed and could be said to be simple and crude. It only showed 2 dots. One of them was flickering with a golden light while the other was suffused with a red light. The golden light spot marked the location of defy. The red light spot, needless to say, indicated the location of the skeleton. It is indeed a rare treasure. Defy couldn't help but feel joy in his heart. His feet moved, and he quickly rushed toward the location marked by the red light. It was less than 1 li, but with his speed, he arrived in the blink of an eye. He looked at the compass and found that the 2 dots on the compass had already overlapped with each other. He knew that he had arrived at his destination. Looking down, there were piles of bones under his feet. It looked similar to most skeletons. However, with his identity as a tiger, he could faintly distinguish the difference between tiger bones and other skeletons. The key was that the skeletons would leave behind a trace of aura. This trace of aura was the key to distinguishing them. Looking down, his mind moved, and he used his demon sense to investigate. His demon sense penetrated through the layers of bones. Finally, when he was about 3 jong deep, he clearly felt the aura of the tiger clan. That's right, it's here. Raising his eyebrows, he used his demon sense to investigate. He felt that this withered bone wasteland was truly a land of exceptional evil. His demon sense continued to investigate, but other than bones, there were only bones. He didn't know how many skeletons there were under these bones. If he really dug to the bottom, he might be able to dig out a deep abyss. Stretching out his right hand, he grabbed at the bones on the ground. In an instant, a pitch-black tiger claw condensed in mid-air. As soon as the tiger claw appeared, a strong demon aura immediately spread from it. The tiger claw was unusually huge. It was more than 10 meters long and occupied a large area in front of him. After the giant claw was formed, it quickly grabbed at the ground under defy's control. Crash! The giant claw was so huge that it immediately moved a large pile of bones to one side. With a few swipes, a huge pit of bones appeared in front of him. It was only 3 feet deep. In a few breaths' time, he dug to the location of the target. With a wave of his hand, he dispersed the gigantic claw and stood in the pit of white bones to take a look. Instantly, he saw a gigantic skeleton in the pit. That skeleton was quite complete, and it was around 40 to 50 feet tall. The skeleton emitted an awe-inspiring tiger's aura. When the bones that were originally covered were pushed away, the tiger's aura was like a ferocious tiger released from its cage. Wave after wave of tiger's aura spread in all directions. Looking at the skeleton, it could be seen that the owner of the skeleton was definitely a powerful demon expert when he was alive. Just the aura emitted from the skeleton faintly carried a terrifying aura. The head was raised high, and every bone was tensed up. It looked like it was about to pounce forward. 2 empty eyes were staring into the void. It looked like it was preparing to launch a fierce attack on the enemy before it died. However, there were 5 ghastly claw holes on its head. It seemed like a hand had directly transformed into a claw and pierced into its head, causing its death. That scene was really terrifying. However, this skeleton was also different from other bones. The skeleton seemed to be made of jade, and the entire body was flowing with jade light. It looked very strange. Go. Seeing this scene, Sakra's pupils suddenly contracted violently. With a thought, a pitch-black crescent-shaped blade condensed in front of him in the blink of an eye. It was thin as a cicada's wing, but it was incomparably sharp. Under the constant practice of the fiendish mist blade, he had long since reached the realm of being able to control the blade at will. As long as he thought about it, he could summon it immediately. When the blade appeared, he bent his finger. Immediately, the blade drew a pitch-black blade light in front of him and chopped on the skeleton. Ding! Something inconceivable happened. How sharp was the blade? Even if it was comparable to a magic tool, it wouldn't be inferior. However, when the blade fell on the skeleton was like a diamond. When the blade fell on the skeleton, not only did it not leave a single mark on the skeleton, but it also stimulated the hidden momentum of the skeleton. The jade light suddenly expanded and shattered the blade on the spot. Golden flesh, jade bone, indestructible body. Di Shitian inhaled a breath of cold air. His eyes shone. After he came out of the 100 Flowers Valley, his mind was filled with all kinds of things. It was said that when one's cultivation reached a certain level, a realm, those who cultivated the body would have an indestructible body. Those who focused on the primordial spirit would have an indestructible primordial spirit. It was almost impossible to kill. The flesh and blood on the outside of the skeleton in front of them had already completely melted away. However, the skeleton was still intact and difficult to destroy. Even if it had not reached the state of an indestructible body, it had already begun to show signs of transforming in that direction. It could be seen that this Tiger Clan ancestor was likely a great expert in the Demon Clan when he was alive. The body of a heavenly demon was already indestructible. When the skeleton in front of him was alive, it was entirely possible that it was a great demon saint. For such a master to be pierced through the top of his skull by an enemy's claw and die, then what kind of earth-shattering master killed him? If I use this indestructible body to refine the tiger soul, wouldn't it make the tiger soul even stronger? He rolled his eyes and an idea appeared in his mind. Without hesitation, he took out an empty bag of holding and slapped it. Suddenly, the bag opened and a suction force came out of the bag. The suction force landed on the skeleton and the skeleton was quickly sucked into the bag. Whoosh! Just at this moment, an ear-piercing sound came from behind him without any warning. A swift and fierce aura instantly locked onto his body. This aura was incomparably terrifying. Sakra only felt that the hairs on his back had all stood up from the stimulation in an instant, as if they were steel needles, standing upright. Who is it? With a shout, his subordinate's reaction was not slow at all. His footsteps staggered and his left foot stepped to the right. His body followed the momentum of this step and turned sideways. At the same time, pitch-black demon mist blades condensed around him like lightning. There were more than 20 of them, and all of them were exactly the same. Once they appeared, the crescent moon-shaped blades flew around his body in strange trajectories and quickly danced. Half of these blades split and flew in the direction of the sound of the air being torn apart. One after another, they flew over like a meteor shower. The demon mist blades had already become a kind of instinct for him. He did not need to think at all to use them. The instant he turned around, the corner of his eyes swept over in a flash. What was the attack that was tearing through the air? An arrow. A ghastly white bone arrow was tearing through the air at an astonishing speed. This arrow was clearly aimed at his back. The arrow's body emitted a kind of deathly power. Bang, bang, bang. In the instant he swept his gaze over, the sharp blades had already collided with the bone arrow. The scene that he saw from this collision not only made Di Shitian secretly shocked in his heart. The bone arrow actually forcibly shattered 3 of the blades. Because the power in the arrow had been exhausted, it was cut into several pieces by the remaining blades and fell to the ground. He looked in the direction that the bone arrow had come from. Surprisingly, on top of a pile of white bones a mile away, a ghastly white human skeleton was holding a white bone bow and pointing it in this direction. To be continued. If you want to know what happens next, please go to www.chidien.com for more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 222. One corner of the map. There were no more arrows on the bow. Obviously, the bone arrow just now was shot from this bow. This skeleton's bones were almost exactly the same as a human's. It looked like a lifeless skeleton whose flesh and blood had already melted away. However, since it appeared here and shot an arrow at Chidien, it was obviously not a lifeless skeleton. The skull of the skeleton was completely dark. Although it was not covered by flesh and blood, no one could see what was going on inside the skull. However, within the two sinister eyes of the skull, there were two balls of oily green flames that were constantly jumping. They looked just like the will-o'-the-wisps that often floated around unmarked graves in the wilderness. It was frightening. What is this thing? He raised his eyebrows and his eyes flashed. He knew about zombies, but he had never heard of a skeleton that didn't even crawl out from the ground. To be honest, when he first saw this skeleton, his heart was really shocked. No matter what it is, if you dare to sneak attack me, then you are my enemy. Kill. His heart beat violently. The heart was where the monster mansion was located. As the monster mansion became more and more stable, the heart was also nourished by the monster chi emitted by the monster mansion from time to time. The speed of this strengthening was faster and more obvious than the other parts of the body. The heart was the monster mansion. Under the violent beating, a wave of dark monster chi immediately flowed through the monster vein to the whole body. Bang! Lifting his foot and stepping forward, a tyrannical force gushed out from the soles of his feet and poured down on the bones. Suddenly, the bones exploded on the spot. Chidien also took advantage of this step and his body swept toward the skeleton like a sharp arrow. At the same time, his hand rushed out, and at the same time, he quickly hugged the seven sins demonic zither in his arm. The aura of the king of beasts in his body continued to condense on his body, and a wave of monster chi gushed out. It looked like a fierce tiger directly from the top of a mountain, pouncing down. It wanted to devour people. Ding dong! He held the zither in his left hand while his right hand furiously brushed across the strings. Immediately, a transparent sound blade as thin as a cicada's wing shot out from the zither with lightning speed, heading straight for the skeleton. The distance of 1 mile was covered in the blink of an eye. However, that skeleton clearly showed signs of life. Unlike the living beings of the world, it seemed to be a type of dead life form. The flames in his eyes flickered violently a few times before he jumped to the side with unusual agility. He jumped like a grasshopper and jumped to the side. He quickly drew the white bone bow in his hand and pulled out a sharp arrow from the quiver behind him. He skillfully narked the arrow and shot it at the sound blade. Bang! There was a loud explosion when the long arrow hit the sound blade. The white bone arrow strangely exploded on its own. The power of the explosion was very scary. The power that leaked out turned the surrounding bones into piles of bone dust. White bone pits of various sizes appeared on the ground. The sound blade was also annihilated in the explosion. This skeleton actually has such power. It's not inferior to a Foundation establishment powerhouse at all. This withered bone wilderness can't really give birth to such a strange undead life form, right? Why haven't I heard the Underworld Raven King and the others mention it? Sakra's heart clenched. The skeleton in front of him, after his initial probing, had a rough idea of its strength. It was at the level of a Foundation establishment cultivator, so it wouldn't be difficult to deal with it. However, what really made him nervous was the skeleton's origin. If this wasteland of withered bones nurtured such a group of strange undead life forms, there was no need for many, just a few tens of thousands of them. Not to mention other things, as long as they rushed to eat the wasteland, at that time, the entire southern barbarian lands might be destroyed. However, the strange thing was that if it had existed before, why had the other monster kings never mentioned it? Even Chen, she did not mention it at all. Ding dong, ding dong. While thinking in his mind, his hands did not stop at all. His fingers quickly plucked the strings of the zither. As he plucked, his monster chi also continuously poured into the zither. Suddenly, the 9 strings moved together. 9 sound blades burst out from the zither like crescent moons. In an instant, the surroundings of the skeleton were completely covered under the attack. Catcher, with a crisp sound, the 9 sound blades swept past like lightning. Relying on the sharpness of the sound blades, they landed on the skeleton's body. Although the skeleton's bones were as hard as diamond, they were still cut open. One of the sound blades slashed directly on the skeleton's skull. Although the skull was hard, it could not withstand the sharpness of the sound blade. The blade was cut in half. Crash! The skeleton's body was cut into dozens of pieces. When the skull was broken, all the bones in its body fell apart with a crash and fell to the ground, forming a small pile of white bones. Hey! What's this? The skeleton shattered. On top of the scattered bones, there was a fist-sized ball of dark green flame burning and swaying erratically. It was faint and eerie, appearing exceptionally eerie. Now that he thought about it, he realized that the flame was almost exactly the same as the flame that had appeared in the skeleton's eyes. When Di Shitian saw the green flame, he couldn't help but be surprised. He could clearly sense the aura of life within it. There was also the power of death. It was very strange. He reached out to grab the green flame. Stay your hand. That flame spark is ours. At this moment, 2 voices shouted at the same time. Their voices were filled with anger and arrogance. When Di Shitian heard this, he frowned and looked in the direction of the voices. Not far off in the distance were 2 young people in black. One was a man, the other was a woman. They both looked very young. When they saw the flame spark, their eyes shone with joy and anxiety, and they rushed over. Me. You want me to stop and I'll stop. Who do you think I am? Di Shitian thought to himself. He snorted in his heart. He felt a cold aura from the man and woman, but it couldn't hide their original identity. They were 2 cultivators. Seeing that they were so anxious about the flame spark, it must be something extraordinary. How could he possibly stop? Not only that, his speed instantly increased by a few notches. Not good, senior brother, quickly take out the array diagram. We've been searching for so long and have killed almost all the undead creatures nearby. Once we get this flame spark, our mission will be almost complete. Hurry. Don't let that demon succeed. That woman had a peach blossom face and a seductive face. When she saw Sakra's action, her expression changed and she immediately shouted. Junior sister, don't worry. Today, not only are we going to get the flame spark, we're also going to kill this demon. I believe that after swallowing this demon, the array diagram will be more powerful. When we go back, Master will definitely reward us. The senior brother had a wretched appearance. His eyes emitted a cold light from time to time. He laughed sinisterly and reached into his arms. When he took it out again, there was a strange triangular piece of cloth in his hand. It was strange to say that this piece of cloth looked very strange. It was dark green in color, and it was unknown what material it was made of. There were mysterious lines on it, forming a mysterious trajectory. The aura emitted from it was unusually evil. Dark white bone, devour all creatures, array diagram, rise. The senior brother took out the triangular piece of cloth, and his expression immediately became unusually serious. He chanted a strange spell, and then, a seal was quickly formed. Swoosh! This triangular piece of cloth flew into the air in an instant. It suddenly crossed a large distance and appeared above Di Shitian and the flame spark. It drew a huge triangular pattern, quickly covering the void and shrouding the area below. And just when this strange array diagram covered the void above his head, the flame spark, which was only a millimeter away from Di Shitian, seemed to be attracted by some strange force and rushed into the array diagram above his head like lightning. When the flame spark flew in, the strange pattern on the surface of the array diagram became clearer. A terrifying aura gushed out from the array diagram. It was as if the space under the array diagram was completely isolated from the outside world. Layers of light continued to emerge. What is this? Almost in the blink of an eye, Before Di Shitian could recover from the shock, he saw that the surrounding space suddenly reversed, and the surrounding things quickly changed into a strange place. He was still standing on countless white bones, but these white bones were glowing with a dark green and unusually strange light. Around him, there was a bone mountain piled up by white bones. On the bone mountain, there was a white bone throne made of white bones. The throne was huge, and on the throne, there was a tall skeleton sitting upright. If the skeletons that Sakura had just killed were of normal size, then this one was simply unbelievably tall and sturdy. It was as big as 3 to 4 meters, as if a giant was sitting on top of it. It had a white bone armor on its body and a hideous white bone sword in its hand. It was quite big, and it seemed to be no less than 4 or 5 meters long. The sword was wrapped in a layer of pale white bone flames. In the 2 eyes, there were 2 huge balls of fire pulsating. If the skeleton that he encountered just now was a skeleton, then this one could be called a skeleton king. Even though he was sitting on the throne, the boundless pressure was like a tidal wave that filled the entire world. Even Di Shitian felt a sense of suffocation when he felt it. That pressure was like a mountain. All around, a chilly wind blew, and there were faint cries of ghosts and gods. Evildor, how dare you snatch the flame spark from us? You are simply courting death. Looking at you, you should be a demon who has condensed an inner core. However, as long as you enter the array diagram, no matter how powerful you are, your blood will be used as a sacrifice to the array diagram today. TSK, this is the first time I use the array diagram. I want to see how you will die. To be continued. If you want to know what happens next, please go to www.chidyen.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 223. Senior Fellow Apprentice Zheng, don't talk too much with this Evildor. Although Master has said before that we are not allowed to have conflicts with the monster clan in the southern barbarian lands, this time it was not us who made the first move. It was this Evildor who broke in. If we kill him, Master won't blame us. Maybe the map fragment in our hands will become even more powerful after absorbing his flesh and blood essence. When we go back, Master will also reward us both. The coquettish woman looked at Senior Fellow Apprentice Zheng beside her with peach blossom eyes. Her body seemed to be boneless, softly leaning on his shoulder, and her snow-white hands gently stroked his chest. It was indescribably attractive. Junior Fellow Apprentice Ju said the same thing as I thought. If Master didn't forbid us to take action against these Evildors in the southern barbarian lands, I would have directly led my fellow apprentices to kill them. There would be no need for us to come to this wilderness to search for the undead life. Using the monster clan's blood as a sacrifice, this formation map should have been refined long ago. I don't know what taboo Master has against the southern barbarian lands. Senior Fellow Apprentice Zheng's face clearly carried a trace of doubt and puzzlement. That's right. This time, Master has sent a total of 16 brothers, including us. Each of us will be in a group of 2, and each of us will take a part of the map. He said that he wants us to come here to collect fire seeds and dead lives. However, in my opinion, there must be something unusual about Master's actions this time. Perhaps he is taking the opportunity to test us. If we do better, we may be appointed as the eldest disciple by Master and receive his true teachings. Junior Sister Ju's peach blossom eyes twinkled. Qiao Yang smiled sweetly. Well, that makes sense. However, now let's see how I deal with this reckless monster. After entering the formation map, no matter how powerful he is, he will have to obediently accept his death. Senior Fellow Apprentice Zheng pondered for a moment and nodded. With a strange smile, he grabbed the woman's plump buttocks heavily and withdrew his hand. He deliberately put it in front of his nose and took a deep breath, pretending to be intoxicated. The woman smiled charmingly and hammered him a few times. However, it seemed that it was heavy, but in fact, it was light as if it was specially stroked. White bones devouring soul, slaying Evildors. Although Di Shitian didn't seem to be too far away from the 2 siblings, he couldn't hear them at all. Covered by the array diagram, the surrounding space seemed to have been completely isolated. He was in a space created by the formation map. How could he hear anything else? He could only look at the huge skeleton on the huge mountain of white bones in front of him with vigilance. This seemed to be a skeleton sovereign. Although it did not move, the vast aura emitted from its body filled this strange space, making people feel as if there was a mountain pressing down on their heads. Instantly, there was a sense of oppression. When Senior Brother Zheng's words resounded in this space, the dark green flames in the skeleton emperor's eyes lit up and flickered violently. Crack! Only to hear a series of crackling sounds that sounded like beans being fried continuously rang out. The giant-like skeleton sovereign slowly stood up from the bone mountain. With a gentle sweep of the bone sword in his hand, more than half of the bone mountain collapsed on the spot. The faint white bone flames on it continued to burn. Gaga! The upper and lower jaws intertwined and touched together. A creepy and strange sound suddenly entered the ears along with the cold wind. Two groups of cold eyes suddenly stared at Di Shitian. Humph! Di Shitian's expression was extremely solemn. His eyes focused. The 7 sins demonic zither in his hand quickly floated up and suspended in front of him. His hands quickly pressed on the strings. From the skeleton sovereign, he felt a terrible threat. There was an aura of death enveloping his body. This was something he had never felt before. No, he only felt the same terrible aura from the old Daoist Qingyun when he met on the Centipede Mountain. The strength of this skeleton must have surpassed the core formation stage. I'm afraid that it could even be said to be comparable to the nascent soul stage and the monster king of the monster clan. In his heart, he clearly realized that this might be a terrifying existence comparable to the monster king. However, Di Shitian was not a person who would sit still and wait for death. With a thought, his heart began to beat violently at an unprecedented speed. In 1 minute, it beat hundreds of times. The demon refining cauldron in the monster mansion seemed to have gone crazy. It spun quickly, bringing about a bright white jade light around the cauldron. Waves of demonic chi were like a flowing river. They directly spat out from the cauldron and quickly entered his body through the monster vein. Following his hands, they poured into his 10 fingers. His hands turned into a phantom above the guqin. His 10 fingers continued to move. On the 9 strings, they were either plucking, or brushing. At this moment, in his hands, it could be said that he had performed all kinds of zither skills to the limit. Every time he plucked, waves of demonic chi, light or heavy, quickly poured into the 9 strings. Ding dong, the crisp and domineering sound of the guqin rang out. These guqin sounds were not in tune. Because each string was different, the skills and power used were different. Waves of guqin sounds intertwined. Immediately, as the guqin strings vibrated rapidly, ripples like the waves of a lake appeared mysteriously. With Di Shitian as the center, they quickly spread out in all directions. In the blink of an eye, it formed a sound domain that covered a radius of 10 meters around him. In the sound domain, there were waves of guqin sound waves everywhere. Every single one of these sound waves contained terrifying vibrations as they spread outwards. Sound originally relied on vibrations to spread through the air. Now that they had formed sound waves that could be seen with the naked eye, who knew what kind of powerful vibrations were hidden within them? Even the air showed signs of distortion under these guqin sound waves. At the same time, waves of guqin sound blades flashed out, one after another. They surrounded the surroundings and danced in the sound domain like lightning. Moreover, the sound of the zither contained traces of a strange power of desire. When it fell into one's ears, it could unconsciously arouse the desire in the bottom of one's heart. However, the skeleton emperor seemed to have no effect on this desire at all. He stared at Di Shitian lifelessly and quickly stepped forward. With a bang bang bang, the bone mountain shook and directly crossed the bone mountain, rushing towards him with a surging aura. It was as if a tsunami was roaring and pressing down. The huge white bone battle sword was easily raised high by it. The sword slashed down without any hesitation, splitting Mount Hua. The move was extremely simple, but this sword contained an extremely dense aura of death. The majestic aura was like the might of the heavens, locking Di Shitian's body in place. It was tightly wrapped around the surroundings. Under this aura, If one wanted to move, it would be like falling into a swamp. It gave people a feeling that they couldn't avoid it. Looking at the white bone fire flashing on the Dao battle sword, it was even more frightening. A chill rose in his heart. When this sword slashed down, it really had the aura of an axe that could split a mountain. It was as if it wanted to completely cut apart everything in front of it. Bang! The battle sword landed on the sound domain. Immediately, the entire sound domain trembled violently. A terrifying power poured down on the sound domain, as if it wanted to completely destroy the sound domain. The battle sword broke into the sound domain on the spot. The sound waves erupted with an endless power of vibration and were applied to the battle sword. However, the bone fire on the battle sword suddenly soared and became abnormally resplendent. It destroyed the sound waves one by one, but it couldn't stop the momentum of the sword from slashing down. Bang, bang, bang! The sound waves couldn't be blocked. Although the sound domain was filled with distortion, the power contained in the battle sword was simply immeasurable. Di Shitian was confident that the sound domain definitely had the ability to contend with a core formation cultivator. However, the Skeleton Emperor had clearly surpassed the core formation realm. It could only be slightly delayed, but it couldn't completely resist. However, Di Shitian didn't only have one layer of defense. Hundreds of sound blades crazily bombarded the battle sword like a storm. Each of these sound blades was terrifyingly sharp. Their attack power was so strong that even a specialized armor would find it difficult to withstand them. However, when they hit the battle sword, they were blocked by the bone fire outside the battle sword. There seemed to be an endless power of death hidden in the bone fire. When they collided with each other, a violent collision immediately occurred. A series of explosions and destructive power erupted. The sound domain, which was already on the verge of collapse, was suddenly shattered into pieces and completely collapsed. After all, the sound blades were no small matter. They were comparable to the attack of a core formation cultivator. Hundreds of them bombarded over one after another. In addition to the resistance of the sound domain, the sharpness of the battle sword was blocked when it was above Di Shitian's head. The power contained in the sword was exhausted. I didn't expect this monster to have some skills. He was actually able to block the Skeleton Emperor's sword. However, he won't be so lucky next time. Go to hell. Senior brother Zheng's cold snort sounded in this strange space. As soon as he finished speaking, the battle sword in the Skeleton Emperor's hand was raised high again. Once again, he used the move splitting Mount Hua and reluctantly slashed down with the sword. The sharp sword chi shook the void. A cold wind blew, and ghosts cried. This sword was truly terrifying. Enveloped by the sword force, Di Shitian only felt that the surrounding space seemed to have completely frozen. It was so suffocating that he couldn't help but want to faint. The sound domain was shattered, and the sound blades couldn't withstand it at all. There was no time to send out hundreds of sound blades to block it in an instant. The aura of death appeared above his head. Although Di Shitian was powerful and was also the king of the demonic beasts in the southern barbarian lands, his combat strength was comparable to that of a core formation cultivator. All kinds of methods had powerful lethality. However, under the absolute power of the Skeleton Emperor, all the methods he had relied on in the past were like clowns. One sword strike was enough to shatter it into pieces. An aura of despair spread in his heart. No, I definitely can't die here for no reason. My life and death can only be decided by me. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 224. Di Shitian shouted crazily in his heart. The look in his eyes had become deranged, and the muscles on his face twitched violently. Countless images appeared in his mind. In Tiger Hill, he witnessed his mother and brothers being captured by the disciples of the Thousand Beasts sect. He worked hard step by step to reach this day. In order to achieve this strength today, he had paid so much and made so many plans and calculations. He had already embarked on the right path of demon cultivation. Was he going to be killed by this Skeleton Emperor's sword today? No, I'm not willing, I'm not willing. My life is up to me, not the heavens. Roar. One image after another, all kinds of plans for the future in his heart. He was not willing. He was not willing to end his life like this. Tiger Mother was still in the Thousand Beasts sect, and he did not know what kind of suffering she was going through. He had yet to see the vast and boundless purple-gold continent with his own eyes. He had yet to set foot on that peak. Watching the bone sword firmly slash towards him, he let out a roar on the spot. The demonic chi in his body quickly circulated in his meridians and rushed to his throat crazily. The slender black hair behind his head fluttered wildly, and his expression seemed to be abnormally deranged. A domineering tiger roar surged out from his mouth. It soared into the sky, and the demonic chi on his body surged like smoke. As soon as the tiger roar came out, the terrifying sound wave was like a stormy sea, continuously spreading in all directions. The piles of white bones under his feet were shattered on the spot by this domineering sound wave, as if they were powder. It was a shocking sight. This tiger roar could be said to be the last roar in despair that was made with all his strength. Almost all the demonic chi in his body was poured into the tiger roar like a tide at this moment. If one did not go crazy, they would not survive. Often, in despair, they could stimulate their own potential. All the unwillingness was poured into the tiger roar. The tiger roar, which had always been powerful, had a breakthrough at this moment. In his throat, there seemed to be a strong feeling that he would not be happy if he did not spit it out. In his heart, he only wanted to vent his unwillingness. His entire person, unintentionally, fell into an incomparable obsession. Obsession, on the contrary, condensed his mind. Roar. The tiger's roar rang out, but what surged out was not sound waves. Instead, a pitch-black ferocious tiger was strangely condensed within the tiger's roar. This black tiger was incomparably huge, and after it was formed, it seemed to be corporeal. There seemed to be an immeasurably terrifying power within the black tiger's body. Facing the white bone battle sword that was less than 2 meters above its head, it roared and ferociously slammed into it. Rumble. In this moment of despair, Di Shitian actually managed to achieve a breakthrough in the sound wave of the tiger's roar and condensed it into form. Condensing a body was no simple matter. The condensed body contained a boundless power of sound waves. It was the essence of sound waves that had been compressed to an extreme degree. Its might was even stronger than a sound blade. This collision was really like 2 mountains crashing together. Waves of terrifying air waves instantly roared and swept out in all directions. Di Shitian bore the brunt of the airwaves and was blown away by the airwaves. He flew hundreds of feet away and the black robe on his body was completely shredded into tatters. The surrounding white bones were crushed into powder. Puff. The destructive power produced by this collision could be said to be terrifying. With the strength of his monster body, he could not help but feel a sweetness in his throat and quickly spat out a mouthful of blood. TMPH, a monster is a monster. Do you think you can escape like this? Let me tell you, the formation map connects with the power of heaven and earth. Once it is used, it will borrow the power of heaven and earth and connect with the surrounding space. As long as the formation map is not destroyed, the White Bone King will never stop. No matter how powerful you are, how many times can you block it? Senior Brother Zhang's sarcastic words were transmitted into the formation map. His mouth was full of disdain. Senior Brother, let's get rid of him quickly so as not to waste time, Junior Sister Ju said seductively. Her seductive body was pressed against Senior Brother Zheng's body. Senior Brother Zheng could not help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. His eyes lit up. He hurriedly shouted, "Yes, yes, yes. Watch me destroy this monster now. Then, we will do something that we both love to do. What do you think?" Hee hee. Annoying. However, right at this moment, an unexpected event that no one had expected suddenly occurred on the bone wasteland. Hoarse and ear-piercing cries sounded in the sky above the wasteland. Moreover, the more cries, the more responses there were. Almost in the blink of an eye, the ear-piercing cries sounded in the wasteland. Wah, 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 wah. The sound of crows was extremely loathsome, and countless people in the secular world called it a bad omen. No matter where they They were never liked by anyone. As long as they were heard, they would be regarded as an omen of bad luck. But now, in this place, it was not just a single cry. Instead, it was an unbroken chain of cries. It was likely that no less than 10,000 crows were crying out at the same time. Whoosh! In the wasteland, incomparably black underworld crows flew out of the skulls in the skulls of the 10,000 bone-devouring trees that made one's heart tremble. Hundreds of underworld crows flew out of the trees. There were close to 100,000 of them. At the same time, in the largest soul-devouring tree, an incomparably huge underworld crow also spread its wings and flew up. This was the most terrifying monster king in the southern barbarian, the Underworld Crow King. The Underworld Crow King flew into the air and spread its wings. The black mass of underworld crows was like a strange dark cloud as it circled and rushed toward the two senior brothers. Oh no, that tiger roar just now was that freak looking for help. Heavens, it's the Underworld Crow King. There are so many underworld crows. Oh no, junior sister, let's go quickly. These underworld crows specialize in absorbing death aura. They're the clones of the Grim Reaper. They just happen to counter our formation. We only have fragments of the formation in our hands, so we can't deal with them at all. Go quickly. Senior brother Zheng's expression changed drastically. When he saw the black mass of underworld crows rushing over, his lips turned white. Although the formation could trap Di Shitian inside, the formation could not conceal the tyrannical tiger roar that he let out. It almost directly penetrated the formation and resounded throughout the entire withered bone wasteland. The Underworld Raven King had once fought side by side with Sakura all those years ago, and he'd once heard Sakura's tiger roar in the gorge at Skyline Canyon. So, when he heard the tiger roar that resounded throughout the wasteland, he instantly knew who it was that let out the tiger roar. Moreover, he even keenly heard an aura of despair and unwillingness from the tiger roar. Without the slightest hesitation, he let out a cry and quickly gathered the underworld crows to rush toward the formation. The Black Tiger King actually met with danger in the wasteland. The Underworld Crow King's sharp gaze stared at the strange triangular formation. From the formation, he felt that there was a shocking aura of death hidden inside. He couldn't help but emit bursts of light. Senior brother, if we leave now, what about that monster in the formation? He's not dead yet. When junior sister Ju heard about the Underworld Crow King and saw the black mass of crows rushing over, her beautiful face also changed. Obviously, she clearly knew what kind of existence the Underworld Crows were. We can't care so much. He's lucky this time. If the formation was complete, the space that evolved from the formation could be hidden into an independent space. Even the tiger roar can't be transmitted out. Let's go. Senior brother Zheng cursed fiercely and quickly struck a seal at the formation map in midair. Immediately, the huge formation map shrunk back into a small triangular piece of cloth. He held the woman's hand and waved his hand, summoning a white bone boat. After entering the boat, he immediately turned into a stream of light and fled into the distance. Whoa! All of this took a long time to describe, but in fact, it happened in the blink of an eye. When the Underworld Crow King brought the crows here, the two people had already stepped onto the boat and fled into the distance. With a cry, a portion of the crows immediately split off and chased after the two people. The other half stayed behind and continuously circled in midair. And in the place that the formation originally covered, Di Shitian's face was pale, and dark red traces of blood flowed from the corners of his mouth. He raised his head and saw the Underworld Crow King circling above his head. His voice was slightly hoarse as he said, "Thank you, Brother Underworld, for rushing over to save me. Otherwise, I, Di Shitian, would probably have lost my life in Huangquan today." Cough, cough. As he spoke, the corners of his mouth revealed a trace of a bitter smile, but he couldn't help but secretly rejoice in his heart. At the last moment, he was risking his life and also gambling on a chance to escape danger. He was gambling that the formation might not be able to block out the tiger roar. The withered bone wasteland had always been the place where the Underworld Crow clan roamed freely. He knew in his heart that as long as the tiger roar spread out, it would definitely alarm the Underworld Crow King. Originally, he thought that if it really went as he wished, Then at that time, relying on the Underworld Crow King's attack from the outside, he might be able to break out of this predicament by using all his strength inside. But he didn't expect that the Underworld Crow King's clan actually had such a deterrent force. It caused the two cultivators to not dare to meet in the slightest, and they immediately withdrew and left. Unusually decisive. Di Shitian. The Underworld Crow King had never seen his human form, but fortunately, the aura on his body couldn't be changed. He looked at Di Shitian and asked doubtfully, "Aren't you in your myriad demon valley? Why did you suddenly come to my withered bone wasteland?" His voice was hoarse and cold, with a thick indifference. It sounded very stiff. However, Di Shitian had long known that this was its nature. "It's a long story. Let's go back to your residence first." Di Shitian shook his head and felt the situation in his body. He discovered that his internal organs had suffered shock injuries. The demonic chi in his body was completely depleted, and his demonic abode was completely empty. Okay. The Underworld Crow King looked in the direction that the Underworld Crows had chased and found that all the Underworld Crows had returned and were rushing back. It nodded, cried, and turned around to fly to the largest myriad bone-devouring soul tree where it lived. After that, another group of Underworld Crows broke away from the group and actually leaned over to Di Shitian. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author and support the original reading. Chapter 225. Sakura didn't dodge when he saw the underworld ravens pouncing over. He didn't sense the slightest trace of killing intent from them. Sure enough, this group of underworld ravens actually worked together and instantly carried him up into the sky, and they followed behind the Underworld Raven King as they flew towards the largest myriad bone soul-devouring tree on the bone wasteland. If the others were ordinary soul-devouring trees, then that one should be the tree king of the soul-devouring trees. Not long after, they arrived in front of the soul-devouring tree king. The huge Underworld Raven King was standing on the crown of the tree, looking in all directions with a deathly stillness. Compared to the other soul-devouring trees, this tree king was at least 10 times thicker. Furthermore, it was formed from abnormally evil-looking skulls. In the empty eye sockets above the skulls, there seemed to be tens of thousands of pairs of eyes looking out. It made one's hair stand on end unconsciously. What was even more chilling was that the group of underworld ravens carried Di Shitian over and directly placed him on the crown of the tree, standing opposite the Underworld Raven King. This tree really is the tree of 10,000 evils. Just by standing on the crown of the tree, a gust of cold air directly drilled into his body from the soles of his feet. His body was already incomparably empty. Once this cold air entered, he couldn't help but shiver. He hurriedly circulated his cultivation method and urged the demon refining cauldron in his body to spin quickly, absorbing the power of heaven and earth in the surroundings to restore his own demon essence. He became even more fearful of this myriad bones devouring tree in his heart. This time, it was all thanks to Brother Underworld's timely assistance that I was able to escape danger. Otherwise, this time, I would have been doomed. I will definitely repay you in the future. If there is anything in the future, come and inform me. As long as I can do it, I will definitely not refuse. Di Shitian looked at the Underworld Raven King with a grave expression. He couldn't help but feel some lingering fear when he thought of the strange formation from before. However, more than that, there was a strong sense of anger. He raised his eyebrows and said in a cold voice, "If I don't take revenge for today's incident, I would be a demon in vain." Anger, a kind of irrepressible anger, kept surging in his heart. This was an inexplicable crisis. The appearance of the strange skeleton with a fire seed had already surprised him, but before he could think about what was going on, the two cultivators had appeared out of nowhere and seized the fire seed. That was not all, they had attacked him without any hesitation. Of course, from the perspective of both races, it made sense for them to kill each other. However, as soon as Di Shitian escaped from danger, the image of the two people who almost took his life was deeply imprinted in his mind. Two core formation cultivators. He definitely had to take revenge for this. There was also that strange flame. No matter how he thought about it, He could not figure out what kind of existence that skeleton was. He was clearly dead, but his skeleton possessed a strange life force. It was extremely puzzling. What was even more terrifying was that strange triangular piece of cloth. It actually possessed such inconceivable power. It could isolate a part of the world, forming a strange land of danger. It was as if it could instantly change time and space. In this short period of time, the things that happened all at once completely overturned his previous understanding. All kinds of mysterious things filled his mind, and he was unable to figure it out in a short period of time. Speaking of which, what he paid the most attention to was that triangular piece of cloth. What exactly is that? Although Di Shitian entered the secular world and knew a lot of simple things about the cultivation world, many things were only in the Zither Melody Valley. So, the things that he came into contact with were definitely few and only existed on the surface. But he didn't know that in this world. Besides alchemists and weapon refiners, there was another skill called formation masters. Formations followed the principles of the world and communicated with the power of the world. It was a method that evolved. Ordinary formations, such as the maze formation and the 5 elements formation, were actually just a way to use the 5 elements of the world. The Tao of formations was also broad and profound. Without talent, it was almost impossible to even enter the door. If the way of formations was cultivated to a high level and reached the Grandmaster realm, even the most powerful forces in the world would not dare to offend him. After all, if one offended a formation Grandmaster and set up a few killing formations in front of the mountain gate, one would not be able to come out unless one did not go out. Otherwise, if one went in, one would not be able to come out. Perhaps those with a high cultivation level would not care. But once the formation was set up, it would be connected with the surrounding environment, the terrain, and even the world. To break the formation would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Those with a low cultivation level would die no matter how many people entered the formation. Such an array Grandmaster would be treated with respect wherever he went. No matter how strong a person was, they would not easily offend an array Grandmaster. The power of the formation was not a problem. However, to set up a formation, it was not as simple as just saying. First of all, to set up a formation, it was not as simple as throwing a few stones. The most basic thing was to set up a formation with spirit stones. This kind of formation relied on the spiritual energy in the spirit stones to support it. Once the spiritual energy in the spirit stones was exhausted, the formation would naturally disappear. Above that, it was to set up a formation with formation plates and formation flags. This kind of formation was to refine magic tools and treasures specially used to set up formations. Things like formation flags did not have much killing power, but if they were used to set up a killing formation, it would be extremely powerful. It could cut off a person's life at any time. It was a terrifying killing weapon. The highest manifestation of a formation was none other than a formation diagram. What was a formation diagram? A formation diagram was a formation that was directly refined into a diagram. It contained the truth of heaven and earth. When the formation diagram was used, it could directly form a formation space and absorb it into this space. When the formation diagram was driven, it could stimulate infinite power and kill the creatures in the diagram. Such a formation diagram could be said to be the peak manifestation of a formation. It was extremely difficult to refine it. However, once it was refined, it would be an extremely powerful treasure. It could be used as a treasure. With a thought, it could be used immediately. If the primordial spirit was combined with the formation diagram, the primordial spirit would exist forever as long as the formation diagram was not destroyed. It could be said that every formation diagram was the peak work of a formation. The formation contained in it reflected the truth of heaven and earth. It was a supreme formation. Every time one of them appeared, it would cause a bloody storm on the continent. Countless experts who had come out, and even those who had not come out, would fight for it. We're all from the southern barbarian demon tribe. Don't worry. The underworld Raven King's words were cold. My clansman reported that recently, some cultivators from the outside suddenly appeared in the wasteland. They were capturing the skeletons and dead creatures in the wasteland. Originally, they didn't provoke me, so I was too lazy to pay attention to them. Now, they actually dared to attack the southern barbarian demon tribe. In a few days, I'll lead my clansmen to kill them. His tone sounded casual, but the meaning behind his words was cold. It made people unconsciously feel a chill. There's no need for that. This time, they attacked me. I want to take revenge on them personally. Otherwise, how can I, Di Shetien, have the face to stand in the southern barbarian lands? Di Shetien raised his eyebrows, and his eyes shone. He wanted to stop it. He wanted to take revenge personally. Otherwise, how could he eliminate the hatred in his heart? Okay. The underworld Raven King looked at him, nodded slightly, and spat out a word indifferently. When Di Shetien saw that this matter was confirmed, his tone changed, and he suddenly asked about the other skeleton. Oh right, what exactly are the skeletons and dead creatures you mentioned just now? Why have I never heard of them before? He was full of curiosity about this strange skeleton. He vaguely felt that this was definitely not a simple matter. The underworld Raven King carefully glanced at Di Shetien. He hesitated for a moment, but still said, "In this world, death is not the end. The souls of the dead return to the underworld. Reincarnation. In the underworld, there is a type of life called the dead life, also called the undead life. It is because the death aura is too strong, so it reignites the soul fire in the bones and forms life. The soul fire is also called a fire seed. Among the undead life, they can seize fire seeds from each other and absorb them to strengthen themselves. There are countless bones in the withered bone wasteland, and the death aura condenses. Every full moon, some withered bones will condense fire seeds and regain life. After death, they would regain new life, and only then would there be dead life and undead life. This type of life could be said to be rather unique. When Di Shetien heard this, he couldn't help but feel that his horizons had been broadened. The boundless world was truly filled with all sorts of strange things. Who could truly comprehend the miraculous nature of creation? If he didn't see it with his own eyes, how could he believe that such a strange life existed? Especially the fire seed in their bodies. According to the underworld Raven King, this fire seed was the essence of this type of life. It was the sublimation of the soul, and it possessed boundless profundities. It was extremely miraculous. Unfortunately, it wasn't of much use to the underworld Raven clan. They absorbed the death aura. Just as Di Shetien was pondering, the underworld Raven King suddenly asked a strange question. I heard that you know how to refine equipment. Di Shetien couldn't help but glance at him with surprise, but he still shook his head and said, I don't know much about equipment refinement, and I only know how to refine natal demon artifacts. If you want to refine natal demon artifacts, I can give you the method of refining equipment. Besides that, I have some materials for refining equipment here, and I can share some with you as well. He didn't dare to bite off more than he could chew. He really didn't know much about equipment refinement. After all, there were many things that one needed to know about equipment refinement. Not only did one need to know various formations, one also needed to know various spirit techniques for equipment refinement, grasp of fire, how to smelt various materials, and so on and so forth. It wasn't something that could be learned by reading a few books. Besides natal magic artifacts, he didn't need to worry too much about equipment refinement. He didn't dare rashly set foot in true equipment refinement, and he'd never had the time to study it. Swish! A trace of a cold light flashed in the underworld Raven King's eyes when he heard this, and he suddenly turned around and flapped his wings before entering the 10,000 bones soul-devouring tree. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared before Di Shetien's eyes. Di Shetien's eyes only revealed a trace of surprise and bewilderment, but he didn't say anything. He knew that there would definitely be more to it later. Sure enough, not long after, the sound of flapping wings was heard, and the figure of the underworld Raven King suddenly appeared once again, standing on the crown of the tree. However, when it reappeared at this time, its mouth was mysteriously holding a fist-sized pitch-black stone. Not to mention that this stone was completely pitch-black, it was also constantly emitting traces of grey gas. This grey gas seemed to contain an impulse that made one's soul want to leave the body and fly out. The warning signs in one's heart constantly jumped, causing one to tremble endlessly. Faintly, there was an incomparably terrifying feeling of evil. It was as if this stone was an evil object. What was even stranger was that there were 7 orifices on this stone, as if a skull was constantly breathing, swallowing and spitting out the surrounding aura of death. Inadvertently, one would probably think that it was an object with life. It was extremely evil. With just a glance, Di Shitian had a feeling of fear, as if there was a fatal threat hidden in the stone in front of him. What is this? Di Shitian raised his eyes to look at the underworld Raven King, his eyes full of surprise and bewilderment. He looked at him with a questioning expression. Indeed, after coming out of the 100 Flowers Valley, he thought that he should know a lot of things. All kinds of materials, as long as they were slightly famous, he would have a general impression of them, but none of them were similar to the thing in front of him. How could he not be shocked? This is a soul-devouring stone. The underworld Raven King placed the stone on the crown of the tree and said coldly, "It has 7 orifices, and it is a rare treasure that can only be nurtured from the myriad-boned soul-devouring tree every 10,000 years. It can devour blood essence and soul essence, very strange. I don't know if this thing can be used to refine a natal artifact." After saying that, he looked at Di Shitian in a daze, obviously very concerned about his opinion. A rare treasure that can only be nurtured after 10,000 years. It's actually a treasure that was nurtured by the soul-devouring tree itself. In this way, it's surely an inconceivable rare treasure. If nothing unexpected happens, it shouldn't be a problem to refine a magic treasure. Di Shitian pondered as he spoke. No matter what it was, since it required 10,000 years to be nurtured, then it was surely not an ordinary treasure. Perhaps it was some treasure that he didn't know of. After the underworld Raven King finished speaking, he tossed the soul-devouring stone before Di Shitian and said indifferently, "All right, this soul-devouring stone is yours. But you have to help me refine a natal artifact in the future. I can't accept this soul-devouring stone. You've just saved my life and I'll help you refine a magic treasure. As long as you let me know, I can help you at any time. Moreover, if you give it to me and want to use it yourself, where are you going to find it?" Sakura took a deep look at this soul-devouring stone and shook his head lightly. It was undeniable that this strange stone possessed extraordinary attractiveness, and it was surely a rare treasure. If it was refined into the tiger soul that was about to be refined, it would probably be able to greatly increase the might of the tiger soul, and it might even produce some sort of strange ability. However, some things should be taken, and some things shouldn't be taken. In Di Shitian's heart, there was always a limit. There's no need. The tree nurtured a total of 3 stones. I'll give you 1, and I still have 2. It's enough. I'll give them to you as payment. The underworld Raven King glanced deeply at Di Shitian, and his gaze became much gentler, but he still shook his head and spat out a sentence. "I'm busy. Only 1 chapter will be updated today. I'll make up for it tomorrow. To be continued. If you want to know about future events, please go to www.chidian.com. There are even more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 226. People with more indifferent temperaments had always been more straightforward when speaking. Often, it was difficult to change what was said. The underworld Raven King seemed to be naturally cold and lonely. It was born with the terrifying reputation of the death god's doppelganger. It liked to stay in places full of death aura and absorb the death aura to strengthen itself. Although it lived in groups, it was always cold and lonely. In its eyes, Di Shitian saw a strange firmness. He knew that if he did not accept this soul-devouring stone, it would not ask him to refine it into a life-source magic weapon. Or it might just be thrown away. Looking at the soul-devouring stone again, he could not help but secretly remember the 7 apertures that were faintly formed on the stone. He still remembered in his mind that in the famous book Journey to the West that he had read in his previous life, the beginning described that there was a divine stone on Huagua Mountain in the Dongsheng Divine Continent. The stone had 7 apertures on it, and it could swallow the spiritual aura of the world and absorb the essence of the sun and moon. Then, countless years later, it exploded, and the great sage, Heaven's equal suddenly jumped out. It could be said to be full of legendary colors. As for the soul-devouring stone in front of him, although it was only the size of a fist, it also had 7 orifices. It also seemed to be nurturing some kind of mystical life within. No matter how he looked at it, it was not an ordinary object. It might even be a rare treasure. It was like a peerless jade embryo that he had obtained in Tiger Hill. To be honest, if he said that he did not want such a treasure, it would be a lie. But if he took it, there was no doubt that he owed the underworld Raven King another favor. Although it did not say that he would return it, how could he not remember it in his heart? Okay, I'll accept the soul-devouring stone. Whenever you want to refine a magic weapon, you can come to the Myriad Demon Valley. Di Shitian pondered for a moment and finally picked up the soul-devouring stone in front of him. This stone itself looked quite evil. Now that he held it in his hand, a strange evil feeling emerged in his heart. It was as if there was a strange power in the soul-devouring stone. The stone seemed to be nurturing some kind of life, faintly beating and undulating. But if he felt it carefully, he could not feel anything. He probed it with his demonic spirit. As soon as the demonic spirit touched the stone, it immediately rushed into the stone like a runaway horse and disappeared completely. It was strange. One had to know that this kind of disappearance was no ordinary disappearance. Normally, if the demonic yuan was depleted, it would only take a little time to recover. But now that it had disappeared, it was truly gone. There was no way to recover it. Indeed, it's very strange. Di Shitian thought to himself as he began to pay more attention to the soul-devouring stone. He silently pondered. If he refined the tiger soul with the soul-devouring stone, perhaps the tiger soul would have the same characteristics as the soul-devouring stone. It could suck people's blood essence and devour their souls. The more he fought, the stronger he became. That's good too. Legend has it that Caillou's tiger soul used a divine tiger while I used an indestructible tiger clan skeleton. No matter how bad it is, it won't be too bad. I don't have meteorites, but I have this soul-devouring stone. With the evil intent of this soul-devouring stone, maybe it won't be too bad. What's more, Caillou's tiger soul itself is imperfect. It contains the resentment of the divine tiger and will devour its owner. With the refining method of my natal demon weapon, my mind and the saber are fused. It is a divine weapon that will follow me for a lifetime. There is absolutely no possibility of it devouring its owner. Perhaps, in the future, the tiger soul I refine will be even more miraculous and powerful than Caillou's tiger soul. The most important part of a natal demon weapon was the word natal. It meant that one's mind and the weapon were fused together. It was a divine weapon that cultivated both the mind and the weapon. Once the owner of such a weapon died, the weapon itself would follow the owner and directly fall and be destroyed. Even if it was lighter, it would still lose its spirituality and have to be nurtured from the beginning. There was no saying that it would devour its owner. It would only be a companion for a lifetime and would never betray its owner. Therefore, if compared with the legends, the demon weapon refined with the life source magic tool method was innately superior in this aspect. After careful consideration, he didn't refuse and put away the soul-devouring stone. After that, he took out a portion of the refining materials he had on him and gave them to the underworld Crow King. Moreover, he also left behind a book of the basics of refining. He still had a few books of the same book on him. They were all seized from him back then. Speaking of materials, Di Shitian also couldn't take out any good materials. After all, the storage pouches he obtained were almost all from those qi condensation and foundation establishment cultivators. How could there possibly be any precious materials and treasures inside? They were all relatively ordinary and common materials. Copper essence, iron essence, and the like. It was better than nothing. The underworld Crow King didn't stand on ceremony and accepted them one by one. After that, Di Shitian meditated on the myriad bones soul-devouring tree for a while and circulated his cultivation method. Relying on the solid foundation of the heaven-grade demon abode, his recovery was several times faster than ordinary demons. Not long after, he completely recovered. The demon qi in his body was like a rushing river, quickly circulating around his body. The injuries in his body also began to recover under the nourishment of the demon chi at an amazing speed. After a period of time, looking at the sky, one night had quietly passed. Di Shitian didn't plan to leave the withered bone wasteland just like that. Of course, he also didn't want to immediately find that pair of dog brother and sister for revenge. He was very clear that even if he found them now, if they were to really fight, it wouldn't be easy to win. The most important thing to do now was to refine the tiger soul. Either he didn't refine it, or he would do his best to refine it. Although he had already found a mystical tiger clan skeleton, one was probably not enough. Anyway, the wasteland was big enough. There were tens of millions of skeletons buried. Who knew how many there were? The tiger clan skeletons were definitely not few. Finding a few more would be good in the future as insurance. He bid farewell to the underworld crow king early in the morning and hoped that he could send his clansmen to the wasteland to keep an eye on those outsiders. Grasp their whereabouts. The underworld crow king also agreed without hesitation. Entering the wasteland again, with the psychic compass in his hand, it could be said that it was abnormally easy to search for the tiger bones. Every once in a while, he would be able to dig up one or two sets. However, it was obvious that his luck this time wasn't as good as yesterday's. The skeletons he found were no longer comparable to the indestructible body like the first set. However, there was also a dense amount of essence chi hidden in the skeletons. Many even emitted an intimidating tiger aura. It could be seen that when they were alive, they were most likely demon clan experts who had deterred a region. However, he didn't expect that what kind of prodigy they were back then would only be glorious for a moment. In the end, they were still annihilated in the long river of time. Ask the world, who could be immortal? Who could live forever and be immortal? It was also difficult for a prodigy of a generation to escape the cycle of life and death. After staying in the withered bone wasteland for 2 days, he found a total of 19 sets of tiger clan skeletons that could still be used. Although the rest were also tiger clan skeletons, they were either damaged or had completely lost their essence chi. Such skeletons were like useless skeletons. They were useless and couldn't be used to refine weapons. He found more than a dozen sets of skeletons, each of which was abnormally tall. After thinking for a while, it should be enough to refine the tiger soul. He didn't stay for long and directly left the withered bone wasteland. In his heart, he was completely holding back his breath. If he didn't personally destroy that adulterous pair, he would never be able to calm down. He was full of energy in his heart. He must avenge this humiliation. Are you summoned a demonic wind and rushed into the myriad demon valley. He returned to the cave abode. Kai Hua followed closely behind and asked for an audience. My king, when you weren't around, a mouse suddenly came to the valley and said that it came to seek refuge with my king. I don't know how to arrange it. After the big mouse reorganized the mouse clan underground, he thought of Di Shitian's monstrous power and didn't dare to delay. He arrived in the valley the day before yesterday and was almost directly burned into charcoal by Kai Hua. Well, let him reorganize the mouse clan and select a small number of strong mice from the mouse clan to send to the valley. Usually, they will be treated like the clansmen in the valley. Every day, they will drink the watered-down monkey wine regularly to stimulate their apologetic nature and see if they can awaken spirituality. If spirituality can be born, you will arrange for the clansmen to instill loyalty in them. They will be loyal to me and the myriad demon valley. When Di Shitian heard this, his eyes flashed and he immediately ordered, Big Mouse is cunning. Even if he surrenders now, he may betray us in the future. We must foster forces in the mouse clan that are loyal to us. Just in case. Yes, my king. I will do it right away. Kai Hua's eyes turned cold as he responded in a deep voice. Pass down the order. From today onwards, I will be in seclusion. Unless there is a major event that concerns the survival of the myriad demon valley, otherwise. If I don't come out personally, no one is allowed to come in and disturb me. If anyone trespasses, they will be killed without mercy. The last 3 words seemed to be squeezed out from the gaps of his teeth. Kai Hua's heart suddenly tightened. He only felt an invisible pressure appear around him, and his heart seemed to stop beating. He couldn't help but tremble and said solemnly, "Please rest assured, my king. I will personally guard outside the cave residence. Whoever dares to break in must first step over my body." There was incomparable firmness in his tone. Kai Hua left. Di Shitian directly put down the stone door. He sealed the cave entrance. He also set up a simple restriction around it. "Temph, if I don't kill that dog couple, I will not be a demon." Di Shitian secretly gritted his teeth in his heart. He was still a little hesitant at first, but now he couldn't care about anything else. This time, not only did he want to refine the tiger soul, but he also wanted to take this opportunity to form a second demon vein. Only by breaking through to a new realm could he be more confident in dealing with that dog couple. After all, the two of them were cultivators who had stepped into the core formation realm. They were not easy to deal with. If he rashly went without preparation, he was afraid that it would be counterproductive. Breakthrough, breakthrough. Only by breaking through again and adding the tiger soul could he be confident. The danger this time completely stimulated him. A pair of core formation realm cultivators could almost take his life. In this way, how could he talk about going to the Myriad Beasts sect and saving his mother? Brothers, the first update has arrived. Today's update will be at least 10,000 words. Firstly, I want to make up for the 2,000 words I owed yesterday. Secondly, I want to get into the right state of mind and start fulfilling the promise I made when I wrote my new book. Previously, I owed around 30 chapters, so I'll try my best to fulfill it. If there are any recommendations, please help me recommend a few subscriptions if you have the ability to do so. Drifting, thank you very much. Chapter 227. Forming the demonic meridian was indeed dangerous. Since he had formed the sorrow meridian, it meant that he could only form the 7 emotions 6 desires meridian in the future. However, the desire meridian was an unprecedented demonic meridian. Every desire meridian was equivalent to wandering between life and death. It required a difficult test. The sorrow meridian had almost caused him to fall into the sorrow of all living beings and never be able to transcend. If it wasn't for the presence of the Lu Chichin, he would have been able to suppress the sorrow and use the heart-cleansing body song to cleanse his mind and maintain his intelligence. Only then would he be able to fuse his mind with the sorrow meridian. Rather than calling it a fusion, it was more like an initial adaptation. This entire process took more than half a year, even close to a year's time. It was evident that the 7 emotions 6 desires meridian was extremely dangerous. If it was during peaceful times, when he stood aloof from worldly affairs and did not need to think about other things, and could concentrate on cultivation, these short 1 or 2 years would be nothing to him. Even if there were 10 times more, he would not care. But now, it was different. All kinds of things came one after another, and he did not have enough time to cultivate. He had to take risks and take a path that he didn't need to take. Each of the 7 emotions 6 desires is extremely difficult to control. They are the desires of all living beings in the world. It's too difficult to suppress them. Since I can't suppress them and I don't have time to fuse with the demonic meridian, I can only choose a desire that has less of an effect on me. Di Shitian had been thinking about this problem for a long time. There were 13 desires among the 7 emotions 6 desires. It could be said that all the emotions and desires that all living beings experience in their lives were included in the 7 emotions 6 desires. However, there were different types of desires. For example, among the 6 desires, there was the taste desire, which represented the desire for good food. This type of desire could be easily understood as the desire for good food. Eat, eat, eat. Once a person had this type of desire, they would have an extraordinary desire for food. Not only would their appetite increase, but they would also be greedy for delicious food. Driven by desire, it was possible that he would continue to eat and eat everything that could be eaten. However, this was much better than the other 7 emotions 6 desires. Just this point alone could be imagined when the meridian of sorrow was formed. The 7 emotions were directly pulled into the boundless realm of desire. Once one fell into it, one would never be able to transcend it. Although the 6 desires were equally terrifying, they were much lighter than the 7 emotions. Choosing the 6 desires was obviously much better than choosing the 7 emotions. At the very least, he could control his mind and not fall into depravity on the spot. 7 emotions: joy, anger, worry, longing, sorrow, fear, shock. The 6 desires: seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking. Among the 6 desires, the desire to see could be understood as the loss of one's mind. One could not help but want to peek and see things that one should not see. That kind of curiosity would instantly expand. These were all bad desires. Listening was related to the ears, and smelling was related to the nose. It could be said that most of the 6 desires were closely related to one's body. Once he was controlled by his desires, the consequences would be incalculable. It was much better than the 7 emotions. However, Di Shitian had also thought that among the 7 emotions, there were some that were less likely to cause irreversible consequences. For example, the word joy. This desire, joy, represented joy and happiness. However, once he chose to shape this, the moment it was formed, he would probably be stimulated by the joy of all living beings and laugh non-stop. Laughing could broaden one's mind in moderation, but once one laughed too much, it would hurt one's mind. If one were to be immersed in boundless joy and be unable to come out, it would probably be a disaster. Therefore, he temporarily let go of the 7 emotions and shaped the 6 desires first. He wanted to see if he could find other ways to suppress the eruption of the power of desire in the future. Otherwise, he would have to face it in the future. Shape the taste desire meridian. After thinking for a long time, Di Shitian finally chose the 6 desires meridian, which seemed to be relatively mild on the surface. It was also the taste desire that he had been interested in from the beginning. After all, no matter how one looked at it, eating was easier to control. Even if it was a little more relaxed, it did not matter. He had never planned to be like those qi refinement cultivators who drank wind and dew and abstained from eating for hundreds or thousands of years. Eating was the instinct of living beings. Moreover, the demon clan itself advocated the consumption of blood and flesh. The more they ate, the more essence and blood they could absorb from the blood and flesh. It was very beneficial to him, so why not? Whoosh. After thinking through all the details in his mind, he casually took out his storage pouch and took out another storage pouch. Then, he lightly patted the second storage pouch. With a huala sound, pieces of spirit stones that were glowing with spiritual light poured out of the pouch. Then, they continuously revolved around each other, and with a continuous huala sound, they poured out from the pouch. In the blink of an eye, a pile of spirit stones was piled up in front of him. It seemed that there were no less than thousands of them. The quality was not high, most of them were low-grade spirit stones. However, there were also some high-grade spirit stones. One had to know that there was no difference in the grade of spirit stones. The exchange rate was 1 to 100. It could be said that the pile of spirit stones in front of him was a pile of wealth. To refine a natal Dharma artifact, one had to set up a unique blood refinement array. With the power of the array, one could ignite the blood flames. Only the blood flames could temper one's blood essence with the flames and continuously seep into the refined Dharma artifact until they were indistinguishable. It allowed the Dharma artifact to fuse with one's body, the artifact to fuse with one's body, and life to dual cultivate. In this refining, the most important thing was this blood refinement array. Di Shitian had estimated that there would be many places where he would need spirit stones in the future when he was in the Zither Valley. The spirit stones that he had originally seized from the rogue cultivators were almost used up when he was refining the 7 sins demonic zither. Therefore, when the cultivators in the valley gathered, he took out a few gourds of monkey wine and exchanged them for a lot of spirit stones. The price of each gourd was around 2,000 spirit stones. If exchanged for high grade, it would be 20. Now, in front of him, there were 100 high grade and 3 to 4,000 low grade. Among the high grade spirit stones, they were all fire spirit stones of the fire attribute. It was necessary to set up the array, and it was best to use fire attribute spirit stones. With a flash of light in his hand, A jade gourd appeared in his hand. Opening the mouth of the gourd, he poured it into his mouth. Immediately, a golden, amber-like wine quickly fell into his mouth. Being nourished by the wine god gourd, the spirit chi contained in the monkey wine became stronger and entered his stomach. Immediately, there was a hot air rising quickly in his body, quickly spreading to the whole body. Running the cultivation method, the hot air was introduced into the meridians, and then into the demon mansion along the demon meridians. In the blink of an eye, it was refined into demon essence by the demon refining cauldron and poured into the demon liquid. For a time, the consumed demon essence in the body began to recover at an incredible speed, and constantly pushed the whole essence, chi, and spirit to the peak state. Essence, chi, and spirit were the three treasures in the body of living creatures. If the monkey wine was not used to increase the cultivation, it was a good spirit wine to restore essence, chi, and spirit. In the blink of an eye, the whole body had completely entered its peak state. Closing his eyes and pondering for a while, his eyes suddenly opened. 2 rays of light shot out. He reached out and quickly picked up the upper-grade fire spirit stones to set up the blood-refining formation. The upper-grade fire spirit stones were the best. Every time he picked up a piece, he placed it at a different angle. It looked messy, but if one looked closely, they would be able to see all kinds of unusual mysteries. He had already had experience in the past, and now he was even more familiar with it. In his mind, he had already planned out every step. Now, all he needed to do was to follow the plan in his mind and do it step by step. In the blink of an eye, the 81 fire spirit stones had been placed where they should be. Then, he stretched out his left hand, and his right index finger quickly cut his left wrist. A sharp edge flashed past, and suddenly, there was no resistance, and a deep wound immediately appeared on his wrist. Gritting his teeth, his expression was incomparably cold, and the strength in his body urged. Suddenly, a stream of hot blood essence spewed out from the wound. It fell into the array, and instantly dyed the spirit stones that set up the array red. Then, it condensed into a mass of blood in the array. Blood refines all things, refine demon weapons, blood refinement array, rise. Di Shitian shouted, and his hand quickly condensed a mysterious seal. When the seal was formed, the demon essence in his body was almost instantly extracted by 1/3. Without the slightest hesitation, the seal was hit into the array on the spot. In an instant, the seemingly ordinary spirit stones, which had not changed before, flashed bright crimson-red spiritual light. All of a sudden, there seemed to be some kind of inexplicable connection between the spirit stones. Then, all the spirit stones disappeared, and merged with the surrounding heaven and earth, triggering the power of heaven and earth. Bang! As soon as the array was activated, a burst of fire spiritual power followed a mysterious trajectory and quickly rushed to the mass of blood in the middle of the array. With a ting sound, the mass of blood essence fluctuated violently, and after 9 times in a row, this mass of blood essence magically formed a mass of blood-colored flame. It was the blood essence flame that was necessary to refine the life source magic weapon. Life source blood flame, help me refine the bones. Go. At this moment, Di Shitian's expression was incomparably solemn, and he quickly took out the skeleton of the tiger tribe that was comparable to the indestructible body that he had obtained earlier. This skeleton was abnormally tall, and its whole body was crystal clear like jade. There was a jade light flowing on its surface, and it looked incomparably mysterious. It faintly emitted an intimidating aura that made people unconsciously feel awe. He raised his hand and threw this god's bone above the blood refinement array. Grow! He shouted softly, and pointed at the life source blood flame in the blood refinement array. Suddenly, the mass of blood flame began to rapidly grow at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, it had become a meter wide, like a pillar of fire, suspended below the god's bone, and the blood-colored flame continued to burn the god's bone. For a moment, one could see that within the blood flame, as it burned, there were traces of blood-red blood continuously seeping into the bones. It was very strange. Poof! Di Shitian looked at the blood flame and urged his strength again. The wound that had not healed burst open again, and a fountain of blood gushed out, rushing directly into the blood flame. Second update. At least 10,000 words will be updated today, and there will be more in the evening. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chidien.com and read more chapters. Support the author, support the legal reading. Chapter 228. The lifeblood flame burned essence blood. With the help of the flame, it allowed the essence blood to continuously seep into the material to be tempered. The skeleton was really too huge. If one wanted to use essence blood to completely fill it and even temper it, the amount of essence blood that would be consumed would likely reach a level that would make one's hair stand on end. Once the blood essence rushed into the flame of the blood flame immediately burned fiercely. Streaks of blood color continuously seeped into the skeleton. After stimulating the blood essence, Defy did not hesitate to pick up the god of wine gourd and violently gulp down a few mouthfuls of spirit wine. The monkey wine was brewed from various spirit herbs and fruits in the mountains. There was a huge amount of essence hidden in the wine. Once it entered the body, it immediately turned into streaks of essence and rapidly filled every part of his body. His heart was also beating violently at an unusually fast speed. The heart was the source of the blood. With this violent beat, there was immediately a stream of blood essence gushing out from the heart and flowing through the blood vessels to the entire body. Most of the essence entered the heart to support this powerful blood production. A portion entered the bones of the body to stimulate the bone marrow and also refine the blood essence. Streams of blood flowed out continuously, churning around his body. For a moment, his entire body felt warm, sweeping away the feeling of weakness he felt when he forced out his essence blood. This was also because he had the spirit wine in hand. Otherwise, even if he could refine the tiger soul this time, he would have used up more than half of his blood essence and collapsed on the spot. Without 10 days to half a month, he would not be able to recover. However, it was different now. The spirit wine was the most nourishing. It was just right to refine the essence in the wine and replenish the lost blood essence. Over time, not only would he not use up his own essence, but he would also change the blood in his entire body in the process. This would cause the essence contained in the blood to become stronger. With strong blood essence, one's physique would be strong. Gulp. He continuously drank large mouthfuls of the spirit wine as he continued to stimulate his strength. From time to time, streams of hot blood essence would be stimulated from his wrist. The blood essence poured into the blood flame, causing it to burn even more vigorously. That skeleton could be said to be an indestructible body. If ordinary methods were used, it was likely that even magical treasures would not be able to damage it in the slightest. Its hardness had reached an inconceivable level. Nevertheless, the Great Blood Refining Formation was a wonderful formation in the universe. The blood flames were not purely refined from the outside. Instead, they were being ground by water to seep the essence and blood into the bones. The spreading of the essence blood in the bones was the continuation of the blood flames. As long as the skeleton was filled with blood essence, it would be able to do whatever it wanted. Water mill, water mill. Naturally, it was a slow job. Defy was not in a hurry. From time to time, he would inject his blood essence into the blood flame to keep it burning. At the same time, he was constantly drinking spirit wine. There was a large amount of monkey wine in the gourd. Even if he drank without holding back, he would not be able to finish it in 1 or 2 days. Moreover, every time he took a sip, he would pause for a while to refine the essence contained in the spirit wine. He maintained his mental state so that his body was at its peak at all times. At the same time, he activated the demon refining cauldron in his demon abode to continuously absorb the heaven and earth spirit chi around him. Everything was done in an extremely orderly manner. These days lasted for a total of 9 days. With each passing day, there would be more blood in the bones. Finally, when 9 days had passed, Defy's eyes instantly emitted a bright light. Finally, the refining is done. Looking at the sky above the blood flames, the originally sparkling and translucent bones had completely turned into a blood-colored skeleton. Within the skeleton, there was a blood-red light constantly circulating. It looked extremely demonic. Spine as a blade, condense. With an unusually serious expression, he quickly formed a seal with his hands and quickly struck it into the skeleton. In an instant, the blood flames under the skeleton suddenly blazed. At the same time, the skeleton emitted a boundless blood-red light. Within the blood-red light, something strange happened. Among the bones, except for the spine from the head to the tail, which did not change, the other bones turned into streaks of blood-red light one by one and retracted into the spine. With every bone that was fused into the spine, the blood-red light it emitted became stronger and stronger. Not long after, all the extra bones were fused into the slender spine. Not long after, when all the bones were fused, there was only a blood-colored spine left in the sky above the blood flames. It was strangely demonic. This was not the end. Immediately after, Di Shitian threw the dozens of skeletons that he had previously collected into the blood flames and began to refine them again. These skeletons were not the same as the indestructible bones from before. Although they were the skeletons of the tiger tribe experts when they were alive, one of them was extracted from the tiger tribe at the demon level back then. However, after all, they had been dead for many years. At this time, even if there were remnants of essence in the skeleton, there was no way it could be compared to the beginning. The blood flames' refining speed was much faster than before. Streaks of blood-red silk threads quickly spread on the skeletons at a speed visible to the naked eye. Another 2 days passed as the sacrificial refinement continued. In these 2 days, the other skeletons had all turned blood-red and were emitting a blood-red light. With ease and familiarity, these complete bodies, under the control of Sakra, quickly fused together and turned into blood-colored spines. Excluding the original indestructible bones, there were a total of 19 spines. 10,000 bones returned to origin, combined. Another spiritual art was cast. In an instant, the 19 spines immediately emitted a bright blood-red light. Under a strange force, they quickly approached the thickest indestructible spine. It was strange to say that as soon as these spines got close to the indestructible spine, they would immediately emit a layer of blood-red light and fuse with it without any resistance. This caused the blood-red light on the indestructible spine to become more and more intense. With each fusion, the blood-red light would increase by a bit. When all 19 spines had fused into one, the blood-red light that burst out of the indestructible spine was really dazzling. It constantly spread in all directions. In the blink of an eye, it filled the entire cave abode. Soul-devouring stone. At this moment, Di Shitian took the opportunity to throw out the evil soul-devouring stone that he had obtained from the underworld Crow King onto the blood flames. At this moment, he planned to use the blood flames to temper the soul-devouring stone before fusing the soul-devouring stone with the already tempered spine. However, he did not expect this soul-devouring stone to be really evil. As soon as it appeared above the blood flames, the soul-devouring stone actually beat strangely. The stone became like a human heart, undulating evilly. The 7 orifices on the stone looked unusually strange at this moment. It made people unconsciously feel a chill in their hearts. It was as if there was really something evil in the stone. The black gas on the surface was constantly circling. A strong devouring force suddenly emitted from the stone. It actually swallowed the blood flames below into the soul-devouring stone. What's going on? The scene before his eyes was obviously out of Sakra's expectation. The unforeseen event appeared too suddenly. The blood-refining grand formation was the most inconceivable formation in the world, and it was indispensable for refining a life source weapon. The blood flames that were born in it had never been recorded that they would be swallowed by an object. Puff. Seeing the strange change, Di Shitian was not an ordinary person. He immediately calmed his mind and activated his force again. A large amount of essence blood was quickly released from his wrist. It turned into a blood pillar and rushed directly into the blood flames. Once the blood flames were stimulated by the essence blood, the blood flames immediately surged. However, the strange thing was that the blood flames were still unable to break free from the soul-devouring stone's devouring force. Oh no, I'm afraid there's something wrong with this soul-devouring stone. He secretly cursed in his heart. The soul-devouring stone was nurtured by the 10,000 bone soul-devouring tree after thousands of years. It was originally a 10,000 bones soul-devouring tree. How could a stone nurtured by the 10,000 bones soul-devouring tree be so evil? He thought for a moment. The idea of refining the soul-devouring stone into the tiger soul was still a little too hasty. What should I do now? If I let the soul-devouring stone completely devour the blood flames, I'm afraid the refining this time will fail on the spot. It will be difficult to refine it again. What should I do? Various thoughts flashed through his mind quickly as he tried to think of a foolproof plan. At the same time, he kept adding essence blood into the blood flames so that the blood flames would not be extinguished. However, no matter how he thought, he could not think of a way to suppress the soul-devouring stone. Thump! Thump! At this moment, after the soul-devouring stone had devoured the blood flames, a heart-like throbbing sound could be heard from within the stone. The sound of the heartbeat became more rapid. In the blink of an eye, it connected into one. The surface of the stone looked even more demonic. Forget it. His gaze was fixed, revealing a hint of madness. He stared fixedly at the soul-devouring stone and the indestructible spine floating in midair. His hands danced quickly. His 10 fingers drew countless after-images in front of him. In the blink of an eye, he had formed hand seals. These hand seals were all quickly struck into the formation. They were imprinted on the soul-devouring stone and the spine. Boom, boom, boom. Instantly, the soul-devouring stone and the spine burst out with a dazzling divine light at the same time. It trembled incessantly, and the surrounding air was filled with bursts of air explosions. Waves of air swept out in all directions. Tiger bone. Soul-devouring stone, blood refinement stone, tiger soul. Tiger soul saber, complete. A shout was spat out from his mouth like thunder. The instant his voice sounded, the spine and the soul-devouring stone immediately collided with each other under the influence of an extremely powerful force. Then, a huge amount of essence blood gushed out from his wrist and rushed into the blood flames. Under the stimulation of this huge amount of essence blood, the blood flames began to burn. Bang! The blood flames surged and reached an unprecedented level. The blazing blood flames lit up the entire cave abode, enveloping the spine and the soul-devouring stone in the flames. Boom, boom, boom. The soul-devouring stone itself had not been thoroughly tempered. This fusion was almost like a forceful act. On the spot, the two different forces began to clash with each other. The spine was a fusion of the bones of more than 10 tiger tribe experts and the skeleton of an indestructible body expert. The power contained within had almost reached an unimaginable level. The process of blood refinement was to fuse one's own blood essence and even one's mind into the magic tool along with the blood essence. At this moment, the spine had already been completely refined and it also had the imprint of Sakra's primordial spirit. The moment the soul-devouring stone collided with his spine, his mind was instantly severely injured. Buzz! There was a roar in his mind, and his mind trembled. He felt a sharp pain in his head, and he fainted on the spot. His body fell to the ground with a loud crash. However, the moment he fell, he was still thinking about the tiger soul. The shape of the tiger soul was still revolving in his mind. However, the collision in the blood refinement formation did not stop. Both the soul-devouring stone and the spine were two supreme treasures. When they collided, one could only hear continuous roars. Waves of air continued to surge in the formation. However, at this moment, no one realized that fresh blood was flowing out of the wound on Di Shitian's wrist. Since he had just fallen in front of the formation, his blood gathered together and slowly seeped into the formation. The blood refinement formation was an extraordinary formation. However, this was not a formation meant for killing. The collision between the spine and the soul-devouring stone created shockwaves that continuously battered the formation. It was like a sealed iron can that was stuffed with explosives. The spine and the soul-devouring stone were explosives, and the formation was the iron can. The waves of air could not rush out of the formation, and naturally, the more they hesitated in the formation, the more they gathered and became more violent. Finally, rumble. The blood-refining great array was forcibly blasted apart. This explosion was so powerful that the destructive power of the great array formation was pushed to a terrifying level on the spot. It should be known that the blood refinement formation was set up with 81 high-grade fire spirit stones. When the formation exploded, it was equivalent to these fire spirit stones exploding at the same time. One could imagine how terrifying the power of the explosion was. As soon as this destructive force burst out, it swept out crazily in the entire cave residence. Ding dong! Sakura could be said to be the first to bear the brunt, and the place where he fell was just right beside the array. However, he was not fated to die. Just at that critical moment, a burst of crisp zither music suddenly pierced through the sky, resounding in the cave. Not knowing when, a demonic zither impressively floated on his body. On the ancient zither, the 9 strings pulsated by themselves. Faintly, there was a strange devouring power within the ancient zither. It continuously devoured the destructive power around the Sakura into the body of the zither, protecting his safety. Although he was in the midst of the terrifying waves of air, he was able to remain in good condition and was not injured at all. It was really miraculous. At this time, in the withered bone wasteland, a skeleton with faint flames in its eyes was wandering around aimlessly. However, a triangular map fragment flew out of nowhere and suddenly appeared on top of the skeleton's head. The map fragment rolled up and the skeleton disappeared. The map fragment flew back and returned in front of a man and a woman. Third update, 10,000 word update completed. Next, I'll brew up a little bit before I'm ready to explode. If you have votes, please help me out a few times. Chapter 229. Senior Marshal Brother, there seems to be something wrong with the wasteland these days. Have you noticed that there are underworld ravens flying back and forth in the sky above the wasteland from time to time? It seems like something is staring at us. A woman with a gorgeous face and a pair of peach blossom eyes looked up. She had a seductive look in her eyes. In the sky, there was a grey dot moving quickly. If one did not look carefully, they would not be able to see it. However, the grey dot itself was also moving constantly. Ordinary people would not be able to see the original appearance of the grey dot, but most immortal cultivators had sharp eyes and ears. When they raised their heads and used their eyesight to look, they could naturally see it clearly. Junior Marshal's sister, even if you didn't say this, I already knew. It must be the underworld ravens from last time. But don't worry, no matter how powerful the underworld ravens are, we won't be afraid if there are only 1 or 2 of them. If there are many, we can just escape from here. They really want to piss me off. Let's go find the other Senior Marshal brothers and combine the incomplete maps, complete the formation, and destroy that flock of underworld ravens. Senior Marshal Brother Zheng's face was ugly to begin with. Now that he was determined, his face became even more ferocious. In this world, no one was a fool. The 2 of them also knew that the reason why this flock of underworld ravens targeted them was probably because of the previous attempt to kill that demon. However, the Southern Barbarian was a small place. In their impression, it wasn't a dangerous place at all. Although it was a little strange and there was a flock of underworld ravens here, the strongest in the Southern Barbarian were at most 1 or 2 demons who had condensed their inner core. If they were really determined to deal with them, they would gather all the incomplete maps into a complete formation. It wouldn't be difficult to kill them all together. No matter what, I always feel that if we continue to stay here, there will always be a kind of chilling feeling, as if we will encounter some kind of danger. Otherwise, we might as well leave this place. Junior Marshal's sister Ju still showed a worried expression. She couldn't help but want to leave this place as soon as possible. Junior Marshal's sister, what nonsense are you talking about? Master asked us to come here to collect the undead. Don't forget, there are still 14 other Senior Marshal brothers in the wasteland. If we leave here, I'm afraid that from now on, our status in front of Master will plummet. How can we get the true inheritance? Don't worry, nothing will happen. After all, we are not going into the netherworld to collect undead souls. If something really happens, your senior brother will definitely protect you, junior sister. The first half of the sentence was still very serious, but as he continued, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but reveal traces of obscenity. His eyes lit up as he looked at the seductive woman. Hee, if junior sister is worried, why don't I accompany you to cultivate? What's there to cultivate? Of course it's the inverted dragon and inverted phoenix dual cultivation. Senior brother, you're so annoying. Tick-tock, tick-tock. In the sealed cave, there was a heavenly cave that led straight to the outside of the cave. The entrance of the cave wasn't big, but there were still traces of moonlight falling from the cave. At this moment, it was already the quietest and darkest moment before dawn. Drops of night dew dripped into the cave along with the entrance of the cave. At the bottom of the heavenly cave, Sakra's fainted body was impressively lying face up. Drops of night dew dripped onto his face. The night dew was incomparably cold, and the cold air seemed to have stimulated his unconscious mind. His tightly shut eyelashes couldn't help but twitch a few times. Then, there was no more movement. Tick-tock. However, when the next drop of night dew dripped onto his forehead, his eyes instantly opened with a swoosh. There was still a hint of confusion in his eyes when he just opened them. Why did I faint? Sitting up from the ground, Sakra composed himself. His gaze suddenly focused as he abruptly regained his senses and said, "That's not right, I was refining the tiger soul just now." "How is it?" When he regained his senses, everything that happened before he fainted had clearly surfaced in his mind. Thinking about the violent collision, he smiled bitterly in his heart. That kind of collision between the soul-devouring stone and the spine was like a comet crashing into the earth. He was afraid that the final result would be a lose-lose situation. All his efforts during this period of time would be completely wasted. What a pity, if I thought carefully and didn't hastily add in the soul-devouring stone, maybe this wouldn't have happened. A faint trace of bitterness appeared at the corner of his mouth, but he didn't blame himself too much. Things had already happened, and no matter how much he blamed himself, it would be useless. While he was secretly sad, he naturally turned his head to look at the position of the blood-refining formation. At this time, he just wanted to see what was left after the collision. Even if there were some materials left, it would be good. However, when he looked, Di Shitian's eyes suddenly widened. His eyes were filled with disbelief as he stared in front of him. Even his mouth was slightly open, and he forgot to close it. He stared blankly at the thing in front of him. In front of him, where the blood-refining formation used to be, the surroundings were already a mess, as if it had been completely ravaged by a cow. This was the destruction caused by the final explosion of the formation. However, this was not what shocked Di Shitian. What really made him stare unblinkingly was the battle saber stuck diagonally into the ground in the center of the formation. The saber looked like fishbone stripes on the inside, and it was transparent on the outside. It was a golden amber. The saber was about 5 feet long, and the handle was almost 2/3 the length of the saber. At the end of the saber where the handle and the saber were connected, there were actually sharp tiger claws, which looked ferocious and domineering. Its appearance and style were unique, beautiful and generous, and full of vigor. The strangest thing was that there was a dark green bead at the point where the tiger soul's handle and the saber's body were connected. The green bead was perfectly integrated into the tiger soul. However, the surface of the bead flickered with a dark light from time to time, and it gave off a strange and evil aura. It also gave the tiger soul a strange and evil aura. The tiger soul has actually been refined. Di Shitian stared at the battle saber in front of him in a daze. He was a little dumbfounded and in disbelief. The scene in front of him was completely out of his expectations. At the moment before he fainted, he did the act of forcibly fusing the soul-devouring stone and the mysterious spine together. It was the act of a gambler who put all his eggs in one basket when he had no other choice. He was just holding on to a sliver of hope in his heart. He did not expect that. He did not expect that he would actually succeed. The appearance of the tiger soul in front of him was exactly the same as the shape he had imagined in his mind. The only difference was that there was an additional strange green bead in the saber. Wang. He suddenly stood up and extended his right hand toward the tiger soul. The bloodline connection between him and the tiger soul immediately caused the tiger soul's body to vibrate violently. The saber hummed, and it gave off a joyful and intimate aura. With a whoosh, it rose from the ground, leaving behind a trail of golden light in the air. The slender saber handle instantly appeared in his hand. Pa. He held it tightly in his hand and felt the bloodline connection from the saber. It was as if the entire saber was a part of his body. The tiger soul kept jumping in his hand and humming softly. He held the saber with one hand and stroked it excitedly with the other. Looking at the new saber, he kept calling out, "Good, good, good. Tiger soul, the divine weapon that belongs to me has finally appeared. From today onwards, you will accompany me to face countless challenges in the future. Let us live and die together, and never leave each other." Wang. The tiger soul seemed to be able to sense the emotions in Di Shitian's heart. It could not help but let out a passionate humming sound as well. It seemed to be magical. He did not care about how the tiger soul was formed. He quickly probed the saber with his demon consciousness to investigate the tiger soul's specific situation. After a while, Di Shitian's eyes gradually became unusually strange. There seemed to be a sense of disbelief amidst the strangeness. I didn't expect that I would actually refine such a divine weapon. However, does this count as a natal demon weapon? After a long while, he finally said something that was difficult to say. His expression was very strange. Speaking of this tiger soul, during the refinement process, it did not completely follow the refinement process of a natal dharmic weapon. Firstly, the 9 Heavens 9 Extremes origin returning formation of the natal dharmic weapon was not engraved in time. This formation was the source and core of the weapon's continuous transformation and evolution. Logically speaking, without this set of formations, it was equivalent to losing the opportunity to evolve and advance to a higher grade. However, the strange thing was that even though he didn't have the 9 Heavens 9 Extremes origin returning formation, the tiger soul didn't lose its ability to evolve. Instead, because of the addition of the Soul Eater stone at the last moment, it allowed the tiger soul to possess the terrifying ability to devour blood essence and soul. Once it struck, the blood essence in the enemy's body would naturally be devoured by the tiger soul. It could even devour the enemy's soul. Once the blood essence devoured reached a certain level, the tiger soul would evolve and transform into a stronger state. Moreover, because of the soul-devouring stone, the tiger soul had almost unlimited possibilities to evolve. However, apart from this, the tiger soul's other abilities were sharpness and indestructibility. Sharpness referred to its incomparable sharpness. The sharpness of its sharpness was immeasurable. As for indestructibility, the tiger soul inherited the characteristics of the original god's bone. It could be said to be indestructible. It was difficult to destroy. This indestructibility ability would become stronger as the tiger soul became stronger. However, apart from these, it did not have any other abilities. The green pearl in the saber was also condensed from the essence of the soul-devouring stone. It was an important part of the tiger soul. The reason the tiger soul could have the ability to evolve continuously was because of this green pearl. Swoosh! He stared at the tiger soul. With a flick of his wrist, the saber light changed direction and slashed at the stone wall beside him. In an instant, something terrifying happened. The tiger soul's saber did not touch the stone wall, but when the saber slashed down, a huge saber mark appeared on the stone wall as if it was tofu. The sharpness of the saber was truly unparalleled. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 230. What an amazing tiger soul. Di Shitian was not stingy with his praise. The tiger soul weighed no less than 500 kilograms in his hand. An ordinary person would naturally find it difficult to hold it, but it was just right for him. He was a member of the demon clan and walked the path of ancient demon cultivation. Every time he advanced, his demon body would continuously strengthen. His strength was also continuously increasing. Now, with his pure strength, he could completely uproot an ancient tree that grew on the ground. The strength of his strength matched the weight of the tiger soul perfectly. Furthermore, when the tiger soul matured in the future, its weight would also increase. He was naturally happy, but he still had some doubts about the formation of the tiger soul. Furthermore, the tiger soul that was formed was also a supreme-grade Dharma weapon. Once he condensed his inner core, it would break through to become a Dharma weapon. Actually, he did not know. The formation of the tiger soul could also be said to be an opportunity or the will of heaven. As it turned out, the great blood refinement formation finally could not withstand the continuous collision between the soul-devouring stone and the spine and exploded. The great blood refinement formation was a great formation in the world. When it exploded, the destructive force that erupted could be imagined. It could be said to be able to completely annihilate everything within its range. However, that was where the magic came from. The power of the formation's explosion was simply too terrifying. Regardless of whether it was the soul-devouring stone or the spine, although their origins were not simple and could be said to be treasures, to bear the brunt of such a powerful destructive force, even if they were not destroyed, their vitality would definitely be greatly damaged. The soul-devouring stone was a strange stone that was nurtured after 10,000 years, while the spine was the indestructible divine bone of the tiger god. Furthermore, they were both permeated with Di Shutien's blood essence. When the soul-devouring stone swallowed the blood flame, there was also blood essence in it. At this critical moment, both of them instinctively wanted to protect themselves. However, both of them had the same connection of blood essence. For a moment, they followed Di Shutien's last thought before he fainted. They abandoned their enmity and merged with each other, wanting to resist the terrifying destructive force outside together. This was just like an ancient family. In the family, fighting for power and profit was tolerable, but when the family was at the brink of life and death, these fights for power and profit would naturally be put down, relying on each other, and condensing into a group. This was because no matter who won or lost in the battle within the clan, the ones who benefited were all their own people. He was different from others. The soul-devouring stone and the spine were like brothers in distress, naturally hugging each other. Unexpectedly, this fusion actually obeyed Di Shutien's last thought. The blood-refining array absorbed Di Shutien's essence blood and didn't erupt completely. Instead, it poured all the power that erupted into the blood flames within the array. For a time, the bloody flames were unprecedentedly strong. He wrapped the spine and the soul-devouring stone together and quickly formed the tiger soul. In the end, when the power of the bloody flames was exhausted, the tiger soul was also completed a moment ago. This was what Di Shutien saw when he woke up. This situation only happened after Di Shutien fainted. No one knew how the tiger soul was formed, and it would probably become an unanswered question in his heart. Clang! He stabbed the tiger soul into the ground. Di Shutien's figure flashed, and in the blink of an eye, he revealed his original form. A huge black tiger stood in front of the tiger soul. He lay on the ground and closed his eyes. He gulped down mouthfuls of spirit wine and began to circulate his cultivation method. He urged the demon essence to circulate in his meridians. As the demon essence circulated, every time it flowed past a meridian, some demon essence would follow the meridians and merge with the surrounding flesh and blood. To strengthen the original demon body. When the tiger soul was formed, it was time to mold the veins. Molding the demon veins was very important and couldn't be careless. Before molding the veins, one had to raise their essence, energy, and spirit to their peak before calming down. That was the best time to mold the veins. Time passed bit by bit. The demon aura emitted from Di Shutien's body increased and spread into the cave. In a few days, the cave was already covered by a layer of pitch-black demon aura. The outside world couldn't detect anything in the cave at all. Looking at it, it was very strange. He had already experienced molding the demon veins once, so it was easy for him to do it again. He also confirmed the demon veins that he was about to mold. Originally, he had already molded the sorrow meridian. If he were to mold the 7 emotions meridian, then the joy meridian would be the most appropriate. After all, joy and sorrow were 2 opposing desires. In addition, he could already merge with the sorrow meridian. If nothing went wrong, he could suppress the endless obsession of the joy meridian by borrowing the strength of the sorrow meridian. That way, It would be much easier to adapt and merge. However, it was precisely because it was easy that he couldn't mold the joy meridian. Because after molding the second demon vein, his cultivation would officially enter the advanced stage of demon beast. In the advanced stage, molding the third demon vein and condensing the inner core would start almost at the same time. Once it started, it would be the most dangerous moment. At that time, the best choice would be to use the joy meridian, which was easy to control, to form the third demon vein. This way, it would be easier to condense the inner core. Moreover, at that time, there would be the transformation heavenly tribulation. This was an extremely dangerous hurdle, and also one of the most difficult tests for ancient demon cultivators. Therefore, Di Shitian had to consider for the future. Even if he had to bear some dangers because of this, he wouldn't hesitate. Therefore, this time, he still chose the taste meridian. Time passed quietly between heaven and earth, day by day. The cave was still unusually quiet. Outside the cave, Kai Hua had already loyally laid in front of the cave, guarding and not letting any living creatures near. Rumble. In a strange lake, the water in the lake was churning violently. Huge waves surged up. Although it was not a very big lake, when the lake water churned, it gave off a terrifying aura like that of the sea water roaring. What was even more frightening was that the water in the lake wasn't clear and transparent. Instead, it was as black as ink. On the surface of the lake, there were bubbles rising from the bottom of the lake. When the bubbles burst, a black gas gushed out. This gas continued to rise. It wanted to rush out of the lake and into the sky. However, as soon as the black chi rushed 30 feet above the lake, a huge 8 trigrams diagram appeared out of thin air above the lake. It radiated countless golden lights and kept spinning. Under the illumination of the golden lights, the black chi actually made sizzling noises as if water and fire were colliding with each other. The golden light and the black gas were constantly annihilating each other. Boom, boom, boom. As the impact became stronger and stronger, 8 huge ancient bronze pillars suddenly grew out of the ground around the lake. Each pillar was 90 feet tall, and there were countless mysterious talismans engraved on them. The talismans revolved around the pillars, emitting countless divine lights. Faintly, the entire lake was locked. With the appearance of the 8 pillars, the 8 trigrams floating above the lake became clearer, as if it was real. What he brought to the table was amazing. The aura emitted from the 8 trigrams seemed to contain the mysteries of heaven and earth and the path of heaven. It was incomparably profound. Roar. In the lake, an earth-shattering roar rose into the sky. The surging black water in the lake suddenly turned into a black divine dragon. It was unusually ferocious on the outside, and it crazily crashed into the 8 trigrams above its head. Every collision caused the 8 trigrams to tremble violently, and the divine lights on the diagram flickered. The 8 pillars around the lake kept rumbling. The lake was roaring, as if the entire lake was about to flip over. In the sky, black clouds rolled, and countless lightning flashed crazily as if it was the end of the world. This impact lasted for a total of 5 minutes before the lake gradually calmed down. The 8 trigrams disappeared, and the 8 pillars sank back into the ground. On a small hill not far from the lake, a large group of people stood, nervously watching the changes in the lake. There were old and young. In total, there were more than a dozen people, and their expressions were unusually ugly. When the changes in the lake calmed down, most of them left. Only 2 people were left on the hill. One of them was a middle-aged man, and the other was a young girl with a veil on her face. In his hands was a jade-green guqin. During this period of time, the lake has become more and more unstable. In the past, it only fluctuated once every 1,000 years. 1,000 years ago, it fluctuated once every 100 years. Now, it fluctuated once every 10 years. Looking at the current situation, this 8 trigrams heavenly note demon ceiling formation won't be able to suppress the lake for much longer. During this time, you must learn the heavenly note demon subduing song. Otherwise, our Qin family's day of calamity and the purple gold mainland's calamity will arrive in an instant. The middle-aged man stared at the lake for a long time, and sighed heavily. Father, I understand. The young girl nodded lightly. Her voice was like the sound of nature. Xin I have never objected to love. However, things should be prioritized, and responsibility should come first. Moreover, you and that Di Shitian may not have a good ending. Just give up. No, I have made up my mind. Father, you don't need to persuade me anymore. The young girl's tone was unusually firm. Her eyes revealed a stubborn expression. These two people were none other than the Qin family's patriarch, Qin Xian, and Katomi. This lake was the Qin family's forbidden area, and it was also the place they had been guarding for generations. Its location wasn't far, and it was actually just behind the back mountain of the Zither Melody Valley. That place had long been protected by an ancient restriction, and ordinary people wouldn't be able to see its location at all. The reason why the Qin family was here was to guard this seal. This seal was an ancient formation called the 8 Trigrams Heavenly Note Demon Sealing Formation. It was one of the ancient formations. According to the 8 Trigrams, a heavenly pillar was erected, and the demon-subduing Heavenly Note Demon Sealing Formation was connected to the power of heaven and earth, and connected to the earth's divine veins. Even if an unparalleled expert was suppressed by this formation, even if they didn't die, they would lose a layer of skin. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 231. Such a miraculous formation could appear here and seal the entire lake. It was obvious what kind of terrifying monster was sealed in the lake. According to the ancient records passed down by the Qin family, the vicious creature sealed in the lake had existed since ancient times. Moreover, the ancestor of the Qin family had also participated in the creation of this seal. Thus, the Qin family had an ancestral rule to guard this place, or rather, it was a responsibility. Once the seal was broken, a great calamity would befall the world, and the entire continent would be plunged into misery and suffering. The Qin family's garrison here was equivalent to protecting the entire continent. Every generation had great merit and great fortune. Their cultivation speed was far beyond that of ordinary people. The various obstacles in cultivation might be difficult for others, but for the Qin family's bloodline, it was abnormally easy. Why? This was a reward given by the heavens to the Qin family for generations of protection. To be more precise, they were blessed by the heavens. This was the reason why the Qin family could be passed down from generation to generation. Sigh, my daughter. Qin Xian shook his head and sighed with a helpless expression. Forget it. If you want to pursue love, I won't care. However, you must know that the path you've chosen will be incomparably difficult. However, you must remember that you are a member of the Qin family. As a Qin family disciple, you cannot shirk your responsibility. Moreover, the Lu Qi Qin has chosen you. The Heavenly Note Demon Subduing Tune is one of the 3 great divine tunes passed down by the ancestor. Only a zither that has reached the level of a spiritual treasure can play and withstand its power. Therefore, only you can learn this divine tune. Before you learn it, you must not be distracted. Otherwise, you will be the Qin family's eternal sinner. You must remember this. How could Qin Xian not understand his daughter's logic? He knew that persuasion would be useless at this point. He could only try to use time to forget. I know, father. Your daughter will go back and practice now. Katomi was exceptionally intelligent. After nodding slightly and bowing to Qin Xian, she turned and walked back into the Qin Music Valley. Watching Katomi's departing figure, Qin Xian raised his head and looked into the distance. His gaze was fixed on the imperial capital. He thought to himself, what exactly does Di Shitian know? Although he left behind such a totem in China. Recently, it was said that almost all the people in China believed in totems. Could it be that he really knew how to use the power of faith? Strange, very strange. Deep in thought, the person that came to his mind was actually Di Shitian. It turned out that even though he had already left the Harp Melody Valley, Qin Xian had not completely forgotten about him because of Katomi. Instead, He had paid more attention to Di Shitian's various activities in China. He had carefully investigated everything about China and discovered that although there was nothing else, the matter of establishing a totem in China was extremely complicated. The people had always had a mentality of following blindly. Furthermore, because there were countless immortal cultivators in this world, there were many different versions of the story of immortals. In China's emperor, Hua Wanwu, personally said that he was the descendant of the sacred beast Black Tiger and possessed the bloodline of the sacred beast. He was the child of destiny. If the emperor was the descendant of the sacred beast, then wouldn't the people of China be the descendants of the sacred beast? This glory naturally aroused a deep sense of honor and nobility in the hearts of the people. As Hua Wanwu spared no effort in promoting and believing in the totem, more and more people believed in it. Sooner or later, they would be worshipped. The power of faith produced, although not much for each person, when it was gathered, it was an unusually large number. All of it gathered towards the sacred beast totem in the center of the imperial capital. The power of faith itself was the most miraculous and inconceivable power in the world. As more and more of it gathered, it actually caused the totem statue to gradually become mystical. Not only did it become more majestic. Moreover, on the totem, there was a kind of high and mighty mysterious aura that could not be blasphemed. In the night, on the totem, there was a faint white divine light flashing from time to time. Under the illumination of the divine light, many people who were tired for a day became spirited and refreshed on the spot. Some of their minor injuries and illnesses were healed in an instant. This kind of miraculous thing made the other totem even more deeply rooted in people's hearts. When it was worshipped, it became even more pious. Throughout China, everyone regarded themselves as the descendants of the sacred beast. When interacting with the people of other countries, they naturally had a sense of superiority in their hearts. The people had faith in their hearts, and their spirit and appearance could be said to be completely new. Everyone knew how to work hard. The national strength was changing every day, and it could be said to be thriving. The whole country was glowing with an indescribable vitality. It was difficult for Qin Xian to not notice such a change even if he didn't want to. He didn't care too much about the changes in the secular world. The only thing he cared about was the power of faith. This power of faith was magical. According to legend, it was magical enough to make a mortal become a god in an instant. Unfortunately, the specific method of absorption had long been lost in the long river of history. What a pity. After standing on the hill for a moment, Qin Xian also quietly left. Only the pitch-black lake was left, constantly emitting black demonic qi. The surroundings returned to silence once again. It was as if the terrifying turmoil from before had never happened. It was really very strange. Rumble. Time passed by. When Di Shitian went into seclusion again after refining the tiger soul, 9 days had passed. In the cave abode where he was in seclusion, there was suddenly a series of terrifying roars. The mountain where the cave abode was located shook violently. It shook so much that even the rocks on the mountain were quickly rolling down. Roar. A tiger's roar came from the cave abode. It shook the mountain. King Kai Hua was outside the cave abode, staring nervously at the cave abode's stone door. He felt a strong pressure coming from the cave abode, and a faint sense of anticipation appeared in his heart. This is the king's voice. From the sound of it, it seems that the king must have made great progress in his seclusion this time. This is really great. However, I should also work harder. Otherwise, I won't be able to share the king's burden in the future. He secretly drummed up his confidence and prepared to continue to practice hard. He must become a subordinate who could help the king. Although he was in the Demon's Valley, every time he met Di Shitian, he could feel a sense of urgency. He faintly guessed that something big would happen in the southern barbarian lands in the near future. Bang, bang, bang. At this time, in the cave abode, a huge black tiger's entire body completely filled all the space. The purple king pattern on its forehead glowed with a bright purple light, which looked extremely mysterious. At this time, its body was 150 feet tall, but it did not stop there. It continued to expand violently. 160 feet. 170 feet, Every time it grew taller, the surrounding walls of the cave abode were pushed out, and the whole mountain was pushed out completely. Every time its body grew taller, the cave abruptly became bigger. The roar was produced by the collision between its body and the mountain rocks. This kind of violent growth trend continued until it reached 20 feet before it finally stopped. Di Shitian's demon body was 200 feet tall as a hill. Huala, the huge demon body suddenly shrunk to the size of an ordinary person. With a sway of his body, he transformed into his human form. With this transformation, one could only see that his body had become taller than before. His entire body was naked, with pieces of bronze-colored muscles entwined around his body. His meridians were like dragons swimming on his arms. His black hair danced wildly behind his head, and the purple king mark on his forehead was even more breathtaking. No one dared to look at him directly. A ferocious aura swept out in all directions, and a gust of wind blew like a sharp blade. It bombarded the stone walls, and a crisp sound of collision rang out. Gulp, gulp. At this moment, his eyes emitted a terrifying light. He quickly stretched out his right hand, grabbed the jasper gourd at his waist, opened the gourd, and poured it into his mouth. In the gourd, a golden liquid fell into his mouth. His Adam's apple wriggled, and he quickly swallowed it into his stomach. Awesome. Di Shitian spat out a word. His whole body seemed to relax in an instant, and his expression became incomparably comfortable. From now on, I'm afraid I'm going to become an alcoholic. The desire meridians of the 7 emotions and 6 desires are not easy to shape. However, becoming an alcoholic is much better than losing one's mind. I don't have much, but I have a lot of wine. Di Shitian sighed softly. Looking at the wine gourd in his hand, he gently stroked it a few times. This time, it was all because of the matter of the demon meridians. Once again, it could be said that he was familiar with the process. The meridian of sorrow that was formed last time was connected to the main demon meridian that ran from the head to the tiger's tail. This time, it was formed from the main demon meridian that was connected to the front of the right tiger's claw, replacing the previous ordinary meridian. It was not difficult to shape it. The power of desire was drawn out from the 7 sins demonic zither, and the taste demon meridian was smelted. And the moment the molding was successful, an endless desire to eat all kinds of food naturally emerged in his mind. It was as if all the desire for good food in the world had been transferred to him. Fortunately, he had experienced the test of the meridian of sorrow in the past, and his mental strength had greatly increased, so he could temporarily restrain himself. After gulping down a few mouthfuls of spirit wine, the craving for food was strangely suppressed for the time being. However, his body was rapidly absorbing the magical power contained in the spirit wine. He had a feeling that as long as the spirit wine was completely absorbed, the craving for food would surge up again. Drinking wine, using the spirit wine to control the hidden dangers of shaping the taste meridian. It can rely on each other with cultivation, allowing the cultivation to increase quickly. It can turn the hidden dangers into motivation. Di Shitian's eyes flashed. The spirit wine contained a huge amount of essence. Under the drive of the desire for good food, the absorption speed of the essence in the spirit wine was simply incredible. In other words, this hidden danger of the desire for good food could be used to promote the results of rapid cultivation. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.